Chapter 1022. Jingyu was a little tired from walking, so she leaned on the side of the rockery to relax. When she turned around, she saw a dark figure standing under a tree. She was so shocked that she almost jumped up. When she saw who was standing there, Jingyu let out a sigh of relief. "Qinbai, why are you here? I've been looking for you for a long time." Jingyu let out a sigh of relief and stared at Qinbai. "Looking for me?" Qinbai's expression was calm. When he saw Jingyu, he paused slightly and walked towards Jingyu. He frowned and asked in confusion, "Why are you looking for me? Are you okay?" Jingyu looked at Qinbai from head to toe. She didn't hide the worry in her eyes. She frowned slightly and looked at Qinbai. "I heard from the servants that you weren't here all morning. I thought something happened to you. Are you okay?" "You?" Qinbai heard Jingyu's words and his heart skipped a beat. He asked uncomfortably, "Are you worried about me?" Jingyu blinked and looked at Qinbai seriously. "Why aren't you resting in your room this early in the morning? What are you doing in the backyard? You made me look for you." Jingyu stared at Qinbai coquettishly. "Why?" Just as Jingyu was about to pull Qinbai away, Qinbai suddenly stared at Jingyu and spat out this sentence. "Why what?" Jingyu frowned slightly and looked at Qinbai. "Why are you worried about me?" Qinbai's dark eyes stared at Jingyu for the first time. He said, "Didn't you say that you only love Xiaoqin? Why are you worried about me now?" "Qinbai, what nonsense are you saying?" Jingyu stared at Qinbai strangely and said, "Aren't we friends?" "Friends?" When Qinbai heard Jingyu's words, his expression changed slightly. He stared at Jingyu with his dark eyes. Jingyu didn't know why, but she felt that Qinbai was a little abnormal today. "Qinbai, are you feeling unwell?" Jingyu frowned and asked Qinbai. "I'm fine." Qinbai suddenly moved his head away. He avoided Jingyu's touch and took a deep breath. His lips curled into a faint smile as he said, "Let's go. Don't make everyone look for us. I just couldn't sleep, so I decided to take a walk in the backyard." "Oh." Qinbai's expression returned to normal, as if he wasn't Qinbai. Qinbai walked out with Jingyu with a faint smile. Jingyu thought that Qinbai was in a bad mood. Now that he was in a good mood, it didn't matter. When the two came out of the backyard, Lu Miaoqiu was anxiously walking around. When she saw Jingyu and Qinbai coming out of the backyard one after the other, she finally relaxed. Yeah, didn't I tell you not to run around?" Lu Miaoqiu stared at Jingyu and scolded her worriedly. "Ayaya, I'm fine, aren't I? Also, didn't you see? Qinbai is still by my side." Jingyu pulled Lu Miaoqiu's hand and said. When Lu Miaoqiu saw Jingyu acting coquettishly, she sighed helplessly. She didn't know what to do with Jingyu. Qinggu also rushed over when he heard the news. When he saw that everyone was fine, he sighed deeply. Just as he was about to bring everyone back to their own courtyard, he suddenly saw a figure rushing in from outside the courtyard. Chapter 1023. Ninth Imperial Concubine. That person was trembling from head to toe. He held a letter in his hand and panted for a long time without saying a word. Jingyu frowned slightly as her gaze landed on the letter in that person's hand. The letter looked like a cowhide scroll. That person's hand was stained with blood and the cowhide scroll was stained with rust. Jingyu instantly saw the bloodstains. "What's wrong?" Jingyu's heart suddenly constricted and her hands, which were hanging by her side, suddenly tightened. Her pitch-black eyes quietly stared at that person as she asked, "Battle report." That person trembled violently and finally hardened his heart. He abruptly kowtowed and said in a trembling voice, "Our army of 100,000 has been defeated at Tongmen Slope. The 9th emperors are trapped outside the pond. We don't know if he's dead or alive." Boom. The moment this person's words fell, Jingyu suddenly felt as if the world was spinning. She couldn't see anything in front of her and couldn't hear anything in her ears. Lu Miaoqiu's eyes widened and her entire body trembled. "What did you say? You bastard! What did you say? What's wrong with Xiaoqin? What's wrong with him? What right do you have to pass on a fake military report?" Jingyu suddenly rushed forward as if she had gone crazy and started punching and kicking that person. "Ninth sister. Ninth sister, calm down. Qinggu saw Jingyu's actions and hurriedly reached out to grab Jingyu's arm. Say it, say it. Jingyu continued to kick and hit that person without caring about anything else. That person dodged and said with a sad face, I didn't pass on a fake military report. The 9th Imperial concubine and the injured soldiers are at the door. General Shangguan is seriously injured and unconscious. Miss Shangguan and the rest of the soldiers are nowhere to be found. That person's voice was almost laced with tears. When he said this while lying on the ground, Jingyu's kicking movements instantly stiffened. Well, what? Jingyu stared blankly at the person in front of her. She didn't expect that the army that had just received news of victory 10 days ago would be defeated in an instant. How could it be? How could Xiao Chen's army be defeated? Jingyu's mind was in chaos. A voice kept telling her that this was impossible. How could this be possible? Jingyu shook her head fiercely. Suddenly, she broke free from Qingji's hand and ran out of the courtyard. Everyone behind her cried out in alarm. The 9th Imperial concubine. 9th sister. Yeah. Qinggu and Lu Miaoqiu hurriedly chased after Jingyu. Jingyu didn't care about anything else and ran straight for the town gate. When she reached the gate, she saw the injured soldiers lying on the ground. The bright red blood made Jingyu dizzy. Jingyu's gaze swept across everyone's faces and finally landed on one person. The person facing Jingyu was none other than Yuan Mingyuan. At this moment, Yuan Mingyuan had taken off his shirt and was bandaging the wound on his chest. When Jingyu saw Yuan Mingyuan, she immediately ran over. The soldiers who were bandaging their wounds also saw Jingyu's arrival. They all lowered their heads and didn't say a word. Yuan Mingyuan seemed to sense something and turned to look at Jingyu. Yuan Mingyuan, where is Xiao Chen? Jingyu stood in front of Yuan Mingyuan and stared at Yuan Mingyuan as she asked. Yuan Mingyuan looked at Jingyu's expectant gaze and his lips moved slightly. In the end, he didn't say a word and slowly lowered his head. He didn't say a word and just quietly lowered his head. Chapter 1024. Say something. Where's Xiao Chen? As Jingyu looked at Yuan Mingyuan's appearance, her eyes suddenly became misty. She lifted her hand and fiercely pushed Yuan Mingyuan away. Jingyu's strength caused a faint trace of blood to appear on Yuan Mingyuan's freshly bandaged wound. However, Yuan Mingyuan didn't seem to notice. He took a deep breath and said, The 9th Emperors, we lost contact. Why? When Jingyu heard Yuan Mingyuan's words, her hands froze. She stared at Yuan Mingyuan and asked, Why didn't Xiao Chen come back when you guys came back? Wasn't everything fine the last time you guys met? Why is it like this all of a sudden? We fell into a trap. Yuan Mingyuan struggled to put on his clothes and said coldly, The Nanli and Tokyo have already joined forces. The Cebu and Northern Pastoral got the news from somewhere and set up an ambush at Tongmen Slope. Our army was encircled and annihilated by the 4 countries. 100,000 soldiers and horses were all buried. In order to draw away the enemy forces, 9th Imperial Uncle left the pond. It's been 3 days since there's been any news from him. Yuan Mingyuan's lips trembled as he spoke these words one at a time. Jingyu's complexion suddenly paled as all the blood drained from her face. 3 days? Why hasn't there been any news yet? Jingyu grabbed Yuan Mingyuan's collar and shouted, Why didn't you go and save Xiao Chen? Miss Shangguan led the troops to rescue him, but there hasn't been any news yet. Yuan Mingyuan took a deep breath and answered. Jingyu's body trembled. She let go of Yuan Mingyuan's hand and trembled all over. Get out of my way. Jingyu pushed everyone away. She pulled her horse over and got on it. She was about to run out of town. Jingyu. Yuan Mingyuan knew what Jingyu wanted to do when he saw Jingyu's actions. His eyes flashed with shock. He quickly grabbed Jingyu's horse and said, Now isn't the time to rescue him. You have to calm down. How do you expect me to calm down? Jingyu stared at Yuan Mingyuan. She placed her hand on her stomach and said, He's my husband and the father of my child. I have to be with him, dead or alive. Jingyu, if you want to rescue Xiao Chen, you have to discuss this properly. Yuan Mingyuan's heart trembled when he heard Jingyu's words. He grabbed Jingyu's horse tightly and said, If you go rashly, not only will you not be able to rescue the 9 emperors, you might even get hurt. I know what I'm doing. Jing Yu yanked on the reins and broke free from Yuan Mingyuan's grip. I'll go with you. At that moment, Qin Bai, who had been standing behind everyone, suddenly spoke. He pulled over a horse and mounted it. His ink-black clothes made him look cold and calm. Jing Yu's heart skipped a beat when she saw this. She looked at Qin Bai. Wherever you go, I'll go with you. Qin Bai looked calmly at Jing Yu. Qin Bai's words made Jing Yu's heart tremble. These words were so familiar. She vaguely remembered what number 9 had said to her in the cave in her previous life. Once we're out of this cave, I'll go with you wherever you want to go. Such similar words coming from the same person. Jing Yu's eyes suddenly lit up with a faint smile. She looked at Qin Bai's determined gaze and stared into the distance. Chapter 1025. Lu Miaoqiu, Yuan Mingyuan, and the others frowned slightly when they saw Qin Bai's actions. At this moment, the most important thing should be to persuade Jing Yu, but Qin Bai was waiting for Jing Yu to do as she pleased. It was truly inappropriate for him to allow her to do as she pleased. However, no one could stop Jing Yu's actions, and it made them extremely anxious. Let's go. Jing Yu pulled a horse from the side and turned to walk out of the tent. Yuan Mingyuan's expression changed slightly when he saw Jing Yu's actions. He turned to walk to the side of the horse, but Qin Gu pulled him back. You're injured, let me go. Qin Gu snatched the reins from Yuan Mingyuan's hands and mounted the horse. He stared at Jing Yu and said, I'll go with you. Jing Yu glanced at Qin Gu and didn't say anything. She reined in the horse and galloped out of town. Qin Bai and Qin Gu followed behind Jing Yu. The 3 of them rushed out just like that. Jing Yu wasn't heading in the direction of Tongmen Slope. Jing Yu was heading in the direction of the Roman forest. Qin Bai and Qin Gu followed Jing Yu's footsteps and headed forward. Jing Yu, what are you doing? Qin Gu watched Jing Yu run into the Roman forest and frowned in confusion as he asked, Do you really think that I wouldn't dare to run without a bit of confidence? Jing Yu took a deep breath and replied. Her pitch-black eyes scanned the surroundings before she finally reined in the horse and galloped off in the direction of the small path. As the figure galloped, she raised her hand to her mouth. A clear and melodious voice came from Jing Yu's mouth. Jing Yu rode her horse into the depths of the forest. Her voice was intermittent, as if she was summoning something. Qin Bai followed behind Jing Yu. When he heard the whistle from Jing Yu, his expression changed slightly. When Qin Gu saw Jing Yu's actions, he immediately understood Jing Yu's intentions. A faint look of astonishment appeared in his eyes. Not long after Jing Yu's whistle, a clear wolf's howl could be heard from the forest. Not long after, the wolf's howl could be heard again, one after another. In this forest, there was an inexplicable feeling that made one's hair stand on end. Qin Bai and Qin Gu were riding their horses when they suddenly saw a movement in the bushes. Then, under their watchful eyes, a gray figure suddenly emerged from the bushes. Awoo! A gray wolf ran to Jing Yu's side. Qin Bai and Qin Gu followed behind and almost pulled on the reins of their horses. However, they managed to hold themselves back. Then, they saw gray wolves emerge from the dense forest one after another. Qin Ji's eyes were filled with astonishment. When he turned his head to look, he saw that Jing Yu had unknowingly followed one gray wolf after another behind them. Those gray wolves were incomparably vigorous and were running all over the dense forest. Qin Bai also saw this scene and sighed deeply. His dark eyes seemed to flash with a different expression. He stared at Jing Yu's back as if he had made up his mind about something. Qin Gu was just about to turn around and talk to Qin Bai when he saw Qin Bai's gaze. Suddenly, his heart trembled slightly. A very dangerous feeling made Qin Ji's alarm bells ring in his heart. Chapter 1026. Miracle Dr. Qin Gu, is this the first time you've seen something like this? Qin Bai turned to look at Qin Gu. There was only shock in his eyes. Qin Gu looked at Qin Bai and frowned. Yes, this is the first time I've seen something like this. It's really amazing. Qin Bai replied faintly. He turned to look at Jing Yu's back and pursed his lips. Jing Yu continued forward without stopping. The wolves behind her chased after her one after another. Jing Yu led Qin Bai and Qin Gu in a direction. It was really frightening to see such a large pack of wolves after just one round in the forest. Let's go around the side to Tongmen Slope, Jing Yu said to Qin Bai and Qin Gu as she slowed down her horse. Qin Bai and Qin Gu naturally had no objections. They followed Jing Yu to Tongmen Slope. This place was originally a forest, but it had now become a plain. One side was barren and desolate. Jing Yu brought the pack of wolves here. They were so ostentatious and powerful that they stirred up a cloud of dust on this barren plain. Jing Yu's heart trembled when she saw the traces of blood on the ground. There were corpses that had yet to be collected, armor, and swords scattered on the ground. Looking at these things, she seemed to be able to see Xiaochen fighting on the battlefield. Jing Yu whipped her horse fiercely and galloped towards Tongmen Slope. The reason why Tongmen Slope was called Tongmen Slope was because there used to be a cemetery here. The gravediggers dug out an extremely large bronze door from the cemetery. These people wanted to take the bronze door away, but the bronze door seemed to be incomparably tall and they couldn't dig it to the bottom. After digging for a long time, the bronze door was finally dug away. However, there was a mark of a bronze door left on the ground. Hence, it was called Tongmen Slope. Jing Yu galloped with the pack of wolves. When the sun was setting, she finally saw Tongmen Slope in the distance. Although it was called a slope, it was more like a basin. Jing Yu dismounted from her horse and looked around. However, after searching for a long time, she didn't find what she was looking for. Qin Bai and Qin Gu followed behind Jing Yu. Xiaochen isn't here. Jing Yu looked at Tongmen Slope and took a deep breath before speaking. Maybe he's up ahead. Qin Bai paused slightly and said, "Didn't they say that ninth brother was trapped outside the pond? Let's chase after him and take a look." Jing Yu nodded slowly. Just as she was about to turn around and mount her horse, Qin Bai pulled her back. "Jing Yu, you haven't eaten for a day. Eat something and rest before looking again." Qin Bai looked at Jing Yu calmly. Jing Yu looked up at Qin Bai and shook her head slightly. "I don't want to eat." "Jing Yu." Qin Bai tightened his grip on Jing Yu's hand and said, "Even if you don't want to eat, you have to think about the child in your stomach." Jing Yu heard Qin Bai's words and paused slightly. She finally nodded and allowed Qin Bai to pull her to the side. She slowly sat down and ate the dry rations. However, she didn't feel like eating as she smelled the scent of the wind. It was as if she could feel that an earth-shattering battle had happened here not long ago. Chapter 1027. Ninth sister-in-law, let me check your pulse. Qin Gu walked towards Jing Yu and reached out to check her pulse. However, just as Qin Gu was about to walk over, Qin Bai suddenly stood up. He stared into the distance and said, "There's someone over there." "What?" Jing Yu stood up abruptly and followed Qin Bai's gaze. Indeed, she saw a black shadow. Qin Gu paused and turned to look. If Qin Gu were to check Jing Yu's pulse, he would definitely see the thing in Jing Yu's hand. However, Qin Gu was attracted by Qin Bai's voice. The three of them turned to look and saw a black shadow lying in a ditch on the path of Tongmen Slope. Jing Yu quickly walked over. "This is..." Jing Yu's eyes widened slightly. She clearly saw the person lying on the ground and her eyes were filled with astonishment. "Xing Er." Jing Yu raised her hand to help Xing Er up. She raised her hand to check his breathing. Xing Er's breathing was frighteningly weak. Qin Gu hurriedly stepped forward to check his pulse. He took out a medicine bottle and poured a pill into Xing Er's mouth. "Is he okay?" Jing Yu looked up at Qin Gu and asked. "He's fine. He's just unconscious." Qin Gu waved at Qin Bai. Jing Yu stood up and watched as Qin Bai and Qin Gu helped Xing Er to an open space. They raised their hands to take out a water bottle and put it to Xing Er's mouth. After a while, Xing Er finally woke up under Jing Yu's expectant gaze. "Madam." Xing Er weakly opened his eyes and looked around. When he saw Jing Yu, his eyes lit up. "But, Master?" Xing Er gasped for breath. Jing Yu suddenly grabbed Xing Er and asked, "What happened to Xiaochen? Where's Xiaochen? Where is he?" Jing Yu's words were full of urgency as she looked anxiously at Second Xing. "Master is outside the pond." Xing Er's face was slightly pale as he said, The Holy Family and the Poison Sect have joined forces with the four nations to trap Master in the canyon outside the pond. The Holy Family again. The Poison Sect again. Damn it. As soon as Xing Er finished speaking, Jing Yu's eyes flashed with an incomparably vicious light. She clenched her fists tightly as a faint light flickered in her dark eyes. Madam, you can't go. Xing Er's eyes widened. He wanted to say something else, but he suddenly seemed to have no strength to speak. Xing Er, I understand what you mean. Jing Yu pressed a hand on Xing Er's shoulder and said, I know what I'm doing outside the pond. I must rescue Xiao Qin. Qinggu, take Xing Er back to Jinling Town to recover first. Night Sister. When Qinggu heard Jing Yu's words, he frowned slightly. He was about to speak when Jing Yu raised a hand to cut him off. Xing Er can't stay here any longer. You're a doctor, so you naturally know his condition, Jing Yu said firmly as she looked at Qinggu. Qinggu didn't know what to say. He looked down at the unconscious Xing Er and sighed deeply. Then it's decided. We'll rest for the night and you'll take Xing Er back. Qin Bai and I will head outside the pond. It's still some distance away, and it's not suitable to continue traveling at night, Jing Yu said as she stood up and stared deeply into the distance. Chapter 1028. Since Jing Yu had made her decision and Qinggu had no reason to object, he could only agree. That night, Jing Yu and the others were surrounded by wolves as they slept. When the sky started to brighten, Qinggu left with Xing Er while Jing Yu and Qin Bai headed out of the pond. Two figures were running in front of them with wolves following closely behind them on both sides of Jing Yu and Qin Bai. Outside the pond was a plain. Further ahead was a canyon, a small canyon. When Jing Yu and Qin Bai arrived, they immediately saw the messy grass outside the small canyon. It was obvious that a large-scale battle had taken place here. Jing Yu's expression turned serious as she charged into the canyon without hesitation. Wait! Qin Bai raised his hand to stop Jing Yu and said, if the 9 emperors are trapped in this canyon, I'm afraid we will be ambushed if we go in like this. I know. Jing Yu nodded deeply and said, if we want to rescue Xiao Qin, we naturally have to go through this canyon. If there really is an ambush, we won't be able to save Xiao Qin if we try to go around it. If that's the case, I might as well barge in directly. That's true. Qin Bai heard Jing Yu's words and pursed his lips slightly. He replied, then let's go in. Jing Yu nodded. She followed Qin Bai into the valley. Jing Yu paused at the entrance of the valley. She waved her hand and the wolves spread out. They spread out in all directions. They went in one direction to surround the place. After Jing Yu saw that the wolves had scattered, she rode her horse into the canyon. The canyon wasn't long and was just a short canyon. The canyon was a mess and there were many burn marks in the surroundings. A huge rock appeared in front of them and blocked Jing Yu and Qin Bai's path. Just as Jing Yu paused and was about to walk forward, she suddenly heard a wolf's cry. Jing Yu's eyes suddenly turned cold and her whole body became alert. She cautiously went around the huge rock in front of her. Jing Yu's horse had just gone around the huge rock when she saw that behind the huge rock, there was a large group of people quietly standing there. It was as if they were waiting for Jing Yu's arrival. How could Jing Yu not recognize the person sitting in the middle of the crowd? She was wearing a seductive red dress. Other than Nailin Yu, there was no other woman who could wear it so flirtatiously. Her eyes were cold and enchanting. The black-clothed man standing beside Nailin Yu was currently putting away the longbow in his hand. Jing Yu slightly raised her head and looked over. Sure enough, she saw that a gray wolf had already been shot to death. It was the gray wolf that had made the sound. Nailin Yu's eyes brightened as she looked at Jing Yu and said, I didn't think that Jing Yu would come so quickly. Jing Yu looked at Nailin Yu and her eyes flashed with disdain. She faintly said, Nailin Yu, what kind of trick are you playing now? Nailin Yu slowly stood up. Her body was very flirtatious and it made Jing Yu's eyes narrow. This woman was really not an ordinary beauty. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that she was a stunner. However, the viciousness that came from her bones made Jing Yu especially afraid. Once this kind of woman became scary, what wouldn't she do? Chapter 1029. Didn't you come here to find Xiaoqin? The corners of Nalan Yu's mouth curled up as she said, I'm only standing here to show you the way. As Nalan Yu spoke, she slowly moved to the side and opened up a path. She then said, Xiaoqin is inside. Let's see if you have the ability to enter. Nalan Yu's eyes were smiling as she looked at Jingyu. The smile in her eyes made Jingyu frown. She stared behind Nalan Yu as her heart tightened. Jingyu could clearly see a path where Nalan Yu had moved aside. She could clearly feel that Xiaoqin was inside. But now, Nalan Yu had taken the initiative to move aside. What was the meaning of this path? What was hidden on this path? These were all things that Jingyu didn't know. Now, Jingyu wanted to go to this place without any hesitation. Jingyu coldly looked at Nalan Yu. Her expression didn't change as she calmly walked towards the path. Qin Bai, who was standing beside Jingyu, saw Jingyu's actions and raised his hand to grab onto her arm. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Nalan Yu was inviting her into a trap. I have to go. Jingyu lowered her head and looked at Qin Bai's hand. She tilted her head to look at Qin Bai and said, I've said it before. Regardless of life or death, I have to see Xiaoqin. As soon as Jingyu's words fell, Qin Bai's expression changed. He slightly pursed his lips as he looked at Jingyu. His grip on her arm tightened and his dark eyes seemed to flash with a different light. At this moment, there was a moment of silence. Jingyu turned her head to look at Qin Bai. She didn't notice that Jingyu was looking at Qin Bai. If Jingyu had seen that look, then everything that happened next wouldn't have happened. I understand. Qin Bai's eyes regained their calmness. He slowly let go of Jingyu's hand and stood up with his hands behind his back. He looked at Jingyu and said, You can go. I'll stay here. As soon as Qin Bai's words fell, Jingyu's eyes slightly curved. She nodded at Qin Bai and then turned her head to look at Nalan Yu coldly. She calmly walked forward. Wherever Jingyu walked, the guards who were surrounding her would make way for her. Every single one of them looked at Jingyu with a different gaze. Jingyu's expression didn't change and she continued to walk forward. Just as Jingyu was about to reach the path, she suddenly heard an extremely tragic scream. That voice was so familiar that it caused Jingyu to stop in her tracks. Her eyes were filled with shock. Linglan! Jingyu rushed forward as if she had gone crazy. The moment she rushed out of the path, she was stunned by the scene in front of her. In this spacious place, Shangguan Linglan was tied to a cross. The hooks hanging upside down were hooked onto Shangguan Linglan's shoulders. In Jingyu's eyes, Shangguan Linglan's legs couldn't be called legs anymore. Linglan! Seeing Shangguan Linglan covered in blood, Jingyu's eyes were filled with shock. A towering rage attacked Jingyu's heart. Don't come over! Shangguan Linglan was covered in blood. When he heard Jingyu's shouts and saw Jingyu running over, he gritted his teeth and used all his strength to shout. Chapter 1030. Jingyu seemed to sense danger in that instant, but she couldn't stop in time. Just as she neared Jingyu's collar, countless traps were triggered. Jingyu fled pathetically. After a series of thrilling dodges, Jingyu rolled to Shangguan Linglan's side. Only then did the commotion around them stop. Linglan! Jingyu looked around and saw no one else. She rose to her feet and called out to Shangguan Linglan. Who let you in? The 9th Emperor isn't here. He's not here. Shangguan Linglan was on the verge of tears. He looked at Jingyu in a panic and shouted, Hurry and leave! Hurry and leave! Since you're here, why don't you stay a little longer? Before Jingyu could react to Shangguan Linglan's words, another voice suddenly rang out. Jingyu's eyes narrowed as she lifted her head to look in the direction of the voice. The originally empty place was now filled with figures. Wasn't the person who had spoken the poison sect's eldest young master, Yun Tian? It's you. Jingyu recognized Yun Tian at a glance. Standing next to him was the white-robed Yun Jing. Jingyu was also very familiar with him. She looked at the two of them, then at the people around them. They were all wearing armor. She didn't need to think to know who these people were. The poison sect and the Holy Family couldn't possibly be wearing armor like this. They had to be from the country's military. Jingyu's indifferent eyes swept over her surroundings. Hee hee. A cold light flashed through Jingyu's eyes. She opened her eyes indifferently and said, "Where's the others? Come out, there's no need to hide. I know you're here." Ah! A hearty laugh rang out. After Jingyu spoke, a figure slowly stepped out from the mountain. The 9th Imperial concubine has good eyes as expected. Wasn't that familiar face and armor the crown prince of Nanli, Mu Qinghua? And the person who appeared next to Mu Qinghua was the Tokyo's second prince, Xiao Jingran. Jingyu didn't look surprised when she saw the two people walk out. However, no one else came out after the two of them. Jingyu was a little surprised. Didn't the Northern Pastoral and Cebu participate in the encirclement? Why wasn't anyone here? Could they be lying in ambush somewhere else? In order to lure me in, you all really put on a big show. Jingyu looked at the people who appeared one by one and thought back to what she had just experienced. She instantly understood and her lips curled up. Yun Tian stepped out and looked down at Jingyu. He narrowed his eyes and said, "If we didn't use this method, how could the 9th Imperial concubine willingly step in? Where's Xiaoqin?" Jingyu looked coldly at everyone and asked indifferently, "Don't worry, I think the 9th Emperors will be here soon." Yun Tian smiled faintly. Jingyu heard Yun Tian's words and a trace of shock appeared in her eyes. She instantly understood what Yun Tian meant. Despicable. Jingyu gritted her teeth and cursed. "Jingyu, all of this is a series of schemes that they set up." Shangguan Linglan's lips were cracked and his face was covered in blood. He was frighteningly pale and his sunken eyes made Jingyu's heart tighten. Chapter 1031. The news of the 9th Emperor's being trapped is just a cover. Shangguan Linglan took a deep breath and stared at Yun Tian and Mu Qinghua. The 9th Emperors aren't trapped outside the pond at all. He has already broken out. I received the news and brought my troops here, but I didn't expect to be caught by these people. Shangguan Linglan bit his lip and said, "Didn't Xing Er already go out? Did he not send the news? Or did Xing Er?" Shangguan Linglan's eyes widened and he looked at Jingyu in fear. He was afraid that he would hear some terrifying news from Jingyu. Fortunately, Jingyu slowly shook her head and said, "Xing Er is fine. He is just heavily injured and unconscious." Shangguan Linglan heard Jingyu's reply and seemed to be relieved. However, he also seemed to be helpless as he said, "I've forgotten everything. What they want to do is to lure you here and use you to lure the 9th Emperors out. They are killing two birds with one stone." These despicable people. How could Jingyu not know what these people were thinking? When she thought of this, Jingyu's face turned black. If Xiaoqin really came for Jingyu, wouldn't he have fallen into their trap? "Linglan, I'll take you away." Jingyu raised her hand and untied Shangguan Linglan. Shangguan Linglan shook his head and said, "It's useless. You can't take me away. Don't worry about me. Let's go." Shangguan Linglan stared at Jingyu and said, "You are pregnant. Don't worry about me. They won't kill me for now." Jingyu raised her hand and untied Shangguan Linglan. She took a few steps back and cut off the metal chains on Shangguan Linglan's body. Shangguan Linglan lost his support and instantly slid to the ground. Shangguan Linglan's legs could no longer stand. Jingyu saw Shangguan Linglan being tortured by these people and her eyes turned red. She clenched her fists tightly. "This pain, I will return it back to you sooner or later." Jingyu helped Shangguan Linglan lean against a pillar and stared at Shangguan Linglan and asked, "Linglan, who did this to you?" "Don't worry. As long as I don't die this time, I will return it back to you 1,000 times over." When Shangguan Linglan heard Jingyu's question, he replied calmly after a moment of silence. Jingyu looked at Shangguan Linglan and her gaze instantly understood. "Nailin' you. It's nailin' you again." At this moment, Jingyu had never felt so much hatred for someone. One was the Holy Family who had killed her father. The other was the Poison Sect who had treated the people she loved in such a manner. If she didn't destroy the Holy Family and flatten the Poison Sect, how could she get rid of this heartache and hatred? "Jingyu, don't you think you're underestimating us?" Mu Qinghua looked at Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan's actions and sneered. "You schemed against us in the past and now you're trapped here and still doing these useless things. Don't you think you're being ridiculous? Do you really think you can catch me with just these people?" Jing Yu laughed arrogantly. Even if she was at the end of her rope, Jing Yu wouldn't lower her head to anyone. When Jing Yu finished speaking, Mu Qinghua and Yun Tian's faces flashed with anger. They cursed Jing Yu in their hearts for refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Jing Yu didn't care about these people's gazes at all. She raised her hand to her lips and blew a hurried whistle. Chapter 1032. With Jing Yu's whistle, Jing Yu's originally pitch-black eyes instantly turned dark green. Under the gaze of so many people, the blade in Jing Yu's hand suddenly flew out and ruthlessly flew towards the soldiers. The moment Jing Yu's blade left her hand, a wolf howl instantly sounded. Countless wolves jumped up from the hill and tore at the soldiers before they could react. The battle broke out in an instant. Yun Tian and the rest narrowed their eyes as they watched Jing Yu summon a pack of wolves. Their eyes flashed with a fiery light. "Catch her!" Yun Tian and Yun Jing reacted extremely quickly. They jumped down the hill and ran towards Jing Yu and Shangguan Linglan. These people's movements were extremely fast. Jing Yu's figure nimbly shuttled through the crowd. "Linglan!" Jing Yu saw the soldiers approaching Shangguan Linglan in an attempt to capture Shangguan Linglan. Her expression instantly changed. She suddenly jumped up and wanted to run towards Shangguan Linglan. However, just as Jing Yu was about to make a move, she suddenly felt as if something had locked onto her from behind. Her eyes narrowed slightly, and she abruptly rolled to the side to dodge. Just as Jing Yu was about to roll away, an extremely sharp arrow pierced into the position where Jing Yu was just standing. The arrow that pierced into the ground caused a cold, killing intent to flash across Jing Yu's eyes. She turned her head and saw Mu Qinghua holding a longbow in her hand. As Jing Yu paused, the soldiers approaching Shangguan Linglan were about to move. Jing Yu's eyes narrowed slightly. She raised her hand and waved. The few gray wolves that were tearing at each other all gathered around Shangguan Linglan. They tightly surrounded Shangguan Linglan. "Protect her well," Jing Yu replied in a deep voice. She turned her head and looked at Mu Qinghua. A trace of killing intent flashed across her eyes. If she had known that this day would come, Jing Yu would have killed this person on the Iron Chain Bridge. As Jing Yu thought of this, the killing intent in her eyes intensified. She raised her head and looked at Mu Qinghua. Her footsteps moved towards Mu Qinghua's direction rather quickly. However, just as Jing Yu was about to move, Yun Jing and Yun Tian suddenly surrounded her. Xiao Jingran also surrounded her from the other side. The four of them instantly fell into a chaotic battle. Jing Yu originally thought that these people were really in an alliance. However, just as they were restraining Jing Yu herself, Jing Yu discovered that something was amiss. These three people's starting point was the same. They all wanted to capture Jing Yu. However, Jing Yu discovered that these three people were actually on their own teams. For example, when Yun Tian snatched Jing Yu's hand, Xiao Jingran would definitely fight for it and snatch Jing Yu's hand away from them. At that time, Yun Tian and Yun Jing would fight for it together. However, once they snatched her hand away, the two of them would start a new round of fighting. Jing Yu quickly discovered this pattern and a faint smile appeared in her eyes. She never thought that these three people would say that they were in an alliance. When it came to fighting, they still couldn't form an alliance. They would still be on their own teams. A faint smile appeared in Jing Yu's eyes. She borrowed the actions of these three people and leaned towards Xiao Jingran from time to time, as if she was seeking protection. Sure enough, Yun Tian and Yun Jing immediately launched a vicious attack on Xiao Jingran. Chapter 1033. When Jing Yu saw that Xiao Jingran couldn't hold on any longer, she immediately switched to another person. Jing Yu was simply slacking off by playing around like this. On the other hand, the three of them were giving it their all. After this round of fighting, the three of them had expended a lot of energy. Finally, the three of them discovered Jing Yu's plan. Their faces instantly filled with anger and they immediately retreated. Didn't you want to capture me? Why aren't you coming to capture me?" Jing Yu's lips curled up slightly as she looked at Xiao Jingran and Yun Tian. The teasing look in her eyes was so deep that the three of them turned pale. "Stop messing around. Capture her and lure the 9th Emperors here. Everything will be fine then." Yun Tian took a deep breath and said, Xiao Jingran snorted coldly and said indifferently, "Let's do it." Jingyu looked at the three of them and narrowed her eyes. She knew that the three of them were serious. Her expression changed slightly and her expression turned serious. She quietly reached for her dagger. Just as Jingyu was about to make her move, there was a sudden change in the situation. The ninth emperors have brought his men and charged in. An extremely clear shout rang out. Everyone's eyes narrowed and they all turned to look. At the entrance of the valley, it was as if a hole had suddenly been torn open. Xiao Qin. Jingyu saw Xiao Qin at a glance. His ink-black armor was so dark and his eyes were so calm. Jingyu could clearly see the deep nervousness in Xiao Qin's eyes. When Jingyu saw Xiao Qin also accurately located Jingyu's position. When he saw that Jingyu was safe and sound, the nervousness in his eyes slowly disappeared. Just as Xiao Qin relaxed, he suddenly saw a figure in the distance. He raised his bow high and his eyes widened slightly. Xiao Qin saw the movement behind Jingyu. Jingyu also saw the movement behind Xiao Qin. Jingyu's eyes narrowed slightly as she saw a black-clothed person silently approaching. Jingyu recognized that black-clothed person. It was the shadow that Nailan had declared. Xiao Qin, be careful. Jingyu, be careful. The two of them rushed towards each other at almost the same time. Their eyes were filled with anxiety. They only cared about each other and didn't even notice the danger behind them. When the two of them took a step forward, only then did they notice it. Jingyu almost turned her body to the side to avoid it. But because her reaction was a bit slow, the sharp arrow still scraped Jingyu's arm and fiercely stabbed into the ground. Pooh! Xiao Qin suddenly hugged Jingyu in his arms, but it was already impossible for him to avoid it. The black-clothed person behind Xiao Qin fiercely slapped his back. Xiao Qin's face suddenly turned pale, and a trace of bright red blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. Xiao Qin. Jingyu clearly felt Xiao Qin's chest tremble, and her heart trembled. She suddenly grabbed Xiao Qin's arm and asked, "Xiao Qin, are you okay? Let's go." Xiao Qin raised his hand and shielded Jingyu behind him. He gritted his teeth and stood up, wanting to protect Jingyu and leave. Linglan. Jingyu anxiously shouted. Xingyi. When Xiao Qin heard Jingyu's words, he paused and raised his hand to push Jingyu in the direction of Xingyi. He shouted, "Take the lady away." Xiao Qin fiercely waved the long sword in his hand and charged toward Shangguan Linglan. "Guard the entrance of the valley. Don't let them leave." When Mu Qinghua saw this scene, her eyes narrowed slightly. She suddenly raised her voice and shouted. After she finished speaking, she jumped down the hill. Chapter 1034. That woman is useless now. Release the arrows. Mu Qinghua shouted coldly when she saw that Xiao Qin, who had a chance to leave, was heading towards Linglan instead. A vicious look appeared in her eyes as she looked at him. Jingyu's face turned pale when she heard Mu Qinhua's command. She watched as the surrounding soldiers raised their bows. Jingyu's eyes were filled with shock when she saw this. Her green eyes deepened as she shouted, "Go! Stop them! Xiao Qin, quick!" Jingyu ran toward Xiao Qin. Xingyi had just killed a person behind him when he saw Jingyu running towards him. His eyes narrowed as he quickly chased after Jingyu. Xiao Qin. Just as Jingyu and Xingyi were running towards Xiao Qin, Mu Qinghua drew her bow again and shot an arrow at Xiao Qin. "Don't!" Jingyu's eyes were filled with fear as she suddenly raised her voice and shouted. Jingyu saw with her own eyes that the arrow had pierced Xiao Qin's arm and almost pierced through it. Xiao Qin frowned. Xiao Qin's expression didn't change as he cut the arrow in half. "Let's go!" Xiao Qin flung Shangguan Linglan over his shoulder. Just as he was about to leave, the arrows became denser and denser. Xiao Qin couldn't even move an inch. Jingyu and Xingyi had also reached Xiao Qin's side. The moment Jingyu and Xingyi came over, the hole that was torn open with great difficulty closed once again. It would be extremely difficult to get out again. A whir! At this moment, a clear howl of a wolf came from the top of the hill. "It's the silver arrow." Jingyu's eyes lit up when she heard the sound as she cried out in surprise. The silver arrow is here. Then, Jing Yu had just thought of this when she heard another howl. Jing Yu's eyes lit up as she looked towards the top of the hill. How can the Mahist cavalry miss out on such a lively scene? An arrogant voice shouted. Suddenly, a group of figures appeared on the top of the hill. Each of them held a bow in their hands. Jing Yu and Xiao Chen were originally the ones who were shooting at them. Now, their roles had changed. The people riding on the black qilin were extremely accurate with their arrows. One by one, the arrows pierced through the throats of the soldiers like shooting targets. Jing Yu was slightly shocked when she saw this scene. It was already extremely difficult to shoot arrows on horseback, but Jing Yu didn't expect these people to be so proficient in shooting arrows on the back of the black qilin in just a short period of time. Jing Yu was really astonished. Kill! The Mahist cavalry charged down and the originally difficult situations suddenly became sluggish. Mu Qinghua and Xiao Jingran didn't expect that when they were about to succeed, such a group of people would suddenly appear and disrupt their plan. Immediately, their faces became anxious. Mu Qinghua was flustered and exasperated as she shouted to stop Jing Yu and the rest. Awur! The silver arrow rushed to Jing Yu's side and Jing Yu's eyes were filled with joy. She raised her hand and patted the silver arrow's head. Then she raised her hand and removed the Shengguan Linglan from Xiao Chen's back. Chapter 1035. Let Yin Jian and Yin Feng take Linglan away first. Jing Yu fixed Shengguan Linglan on Yin Jian's back and patted Yin Jian's head. Yin Jian, take her back to Jinling. Yin Feng, help Yin Jian open a path. Yin Jian and Yin Feng wagged their tails and charged towards the entrance of the valley. Jing Yu watched as Yin Jian and Yin Feng left and heaved a sigh of relief. She turned around and looked at the group of people who were fighting. Boss! Li Weiming's qilin was the first to rush to Jing Yu's side. When he saw that Jing Yu was standing there unharmed, he finally relaxed. Why are you guys here? Jing Yu looked up at Li Weiming and asked. Sir Xing Heir gave us the news. Li Weiming hurriedly said, the rescue troops are already on the way. However, the horses couldn't catch up with the qilin, so we arrived first. Jing Yu heaved a sigh of relief when she heard Li Weiming's words. She heard that the rescue troops were coming. As long as they could hold on until then, everything would be fine. Let the brothers hold on. Jing Yu took a deep breath and said, I'm afraid we can't hold on. Li Weiming shook his head and said, we have to fight our way out. The Cebu and Northern Pastoral troops are almost here. What? Jing Yu's eyes narrowed slightly, and a grave look appeared in her eyes. There's no time. Let's fight our way out. Li Weiming saw that his brothers were struggling and quickly turned to Jing Yu. Jing Yu's face turned cold when she heard Li Weiming's words. She said, okay. Fight our way out. Li Weiming nodded solemnly. He suddenly turned around and charged towards a direction. He shouted loudly for everyone to fight their way out. Mu Qinghua and Xiao Jingran saw Jing Yu's actions and became anxious. Mu Qinghua looked at the ferocious Mahist cavalry and said coldly, ignore the Mahist cavalry. Go capture Xiao Chen. The moment Mu Qinghua's voice fell, the soldiers all rushed towards Jing Yu and Xiao Chen. Xiao Jingran couldn't let Xiao Chen escape. He suddenly pulled out his sword and charged towards Xiao Chen. Jing Yu looked at Xiao Jingran charging over and her eyes narrowed. Just as she was about to move, Yun Tian and Yun Jing surrounded them. Xing Yi and Yun Tian started fighting. Yun Jing naturally started fighting with Jing Yu. Everyone was fighting together. Just as everyone was getting anxious, Li Weiming was trying his best to open an exit. In this chaotic situation, no one noticed that in the crowd, a figure was silently approaching. That pair of sinister eyes stared at Xiao Chen. Jing Yu was fighting with Yun Jing. Just as she was about to attack, she suddenly saw that figure. Xiao Chen! Jing Yu suddenly shouted. Jing Yu could have easily avoided Yun Jing's palm when she was distracted. However, because of this distraction, Jing Yu's shoulder was hit by Yun Jing's palm. Jing Yu cried out in pain and her body fell to one side. Jing Yu, go to hell. Originally, Xiao Chen should have been the one injured. However, such a vicious sentence suddenly rang out from the crowd. Jing Yu suddenly looked up. Just as she leaned to one side, she suddenly saw the person who was charging towards her. It was the person standing beside Jingyu. He was wearing the armor of a soldier. At this moment he suddenly rushed towards Jingyu. Chapter 1036. Jingyu didn't even have the time to dodge before she felt an intense pain coming from her lower abdomen. The palm that was aimed at Jingyu didn't hesitate to hit Jingyu's lower abdomen. Pooh! Suddenly, Jingyu was like a kite with a broken string. She flew to one side and fell to the ground. Jingyu! Xiaochen saw this scene with his own eyes. He saw the outstretched palm strike Jingyu's lower abdomen. He almost didn't hesitate to run towards Jingyu, but because he was restrained by Xiao Jing ran and the distance between them was too far. So when Xiao Chen ran halfway, Jingyu had already fallen to the ground. Xiao Chen's eyes suddenly became bloodshot. He widened his eyes in shock and anger and let out a beast-like roar. He wanted to rush towards Jingyu, but a shadow suddenly appeared and blocked his path. This shadow was none other than the shadow beside Xiao Chen. It blocked in front of Xiao Chen and didn't let him get close to Jingyu. Get lost! At this moment, Xiao Chen was like a crazy beast. He waved the long sword in his hand and slashed towards the shadow. Xiao Chen was undoubtedly terrifying when he was in a rage. Xiao Chen no longer cared whether he would get hurt or not. All he wanted was to get to Jingyu's side. He waved his arm with great force, and his ferocious look made Xiao Jingran fearful. Child. Jingyu clutched her stomach and her eyes were filled with panic. Waves of incomparable pain came from her lower abdomen, causing Jingyu's forehead to instantly be covered in cold sweat. The person standing not far from Jingyu slowly raised her head. That incomparably beautiful face, if it wasn't Nailan, who else could it be? Looking at Nailan, who was wearing a soldier's armor, Jingyu's eyes were filled with fear. Ha! Jingyu? Nailan-Yu's eyes were filled with intense pleasure. Her eyes were filled with excitement as she looked at Jingyu clutching her lower abdomen. She was so excited that it seemed like her entire body was stirred up. You want to be pregnant with Xiao Chen's child? Do you think I will let you do as you wish? Nailan-Yu's pair of ice-cold eyes were filled with excitement as she stared at Jingyu and said, I can't wait to cut open your stomach right now and strangle the bastard inside. Nailan-Yu, you're so ruthless. Jingyu felt fear for the first time. She raised her hand and clutched her stomach. Step by step, she moved back, wanting to get away from this terrifying woman. That was her child. Nailan-Yu approached step by step. The pain in Jingyu's abdomen became more and more intense, causing a layer of sweat to appear on Jingyu's forehead. The battlefield became more and more chaotic. Everyone seemed to have sunk into a bitter battle. On the other side, Li Weiming had led everyone to tear open a path. Finally, there was some improvement. These ink chelants were really incomparably strong. They had forcibly opened a path. Jingyu, finally, you have fallen into my hands. Nailan-Yu slowly pulled out the long sword at her waist. Her pair of incomparably cold eyes stared at Jingyu. A thick killing intent flashed in her eyes, causing Jingyu's pupils to shrink. Stop! Xiao Chen saw this scene from afar. Almost instantly, his blood vessels swelled. Xiao Jingran was just about to step forward and capture Xiao Chen when Xiao Chen used all of his strength to send a palm strike towards Xiao Jingran's chest. Chapter 1037. Nailan-Yu hadn't made a move at first, but when she heard Xiao Chen's panicked cry, her face filled with murderous intent. It was all because of Jingyu that Xiao Chen had become like this. The Xiao Chen who had only treated her well in the past was now so concerned about Jingyu. But, why? As long as she killed Jingyu, she would kill Jingyu and Xiao Chen would come back and continue to treat her well. She would kill Jingyu. Jingyu, I'll kill you. Nailan-Yu's eyes were filled with incomparable rage. The long sword in her hand stabbed towards Jingyu without hesitation. Jingyu's eyes widened as she watched the long sword rapidly approach. Jingyu stared at the cold tip of the sword. She clearly wanted to dodge it, but the excruciating pain from her abdomen made it impossible for her to move. She could only watch as the long sword pierced towards her. Jingyu! Just as Jingyu didn't move, a cry of surprise came from behind her. Before Jingyu could react, she saw a black shadow suddenly hug her. Jingyu's eyes widened as she saw Nalinue's long sword pierce through his shoulder. Qin Bai! The person in front of her was Qin Bai, who had rushed over from the outside. He was dressed in black and didn't hesitate to hug Jingyu's arm and block the sword for her. Jingyu's eyes were filled with disbelief. Go! Qin Bai furrowed his brows and fiercely clenched his teeth. He didn't wait for Jingyu to pull out her sword. He just hugged her tightly and forcefully broke the sword in half. Nalinues stood in place, holding the hilt of her sword as she watched Qin Bai carry Jingyu away. Her eyes were filled with disbelief and confusion. It was so abnormal. What surprised her wasn't that she didn't manage to stab Jingyu. What surprised her was that Qin Bai had actually appeared and blocked the sword with his body. Two explanations, two meanings. Because Qin Bai had blocked her, Nalinues strangely didn't chase after him. Instead, she watched as Qin Bai carried Jingyu and rushed towards Li Weiming and the others. Boss! Li Weiming and the others saw that Jingyu's clothes were covered in blood and their eyes filled with fear. Hurry up and go! Zhang Qi, who was at the front, shouted. Jingyu and the others looked up and saw that there was a clear gap where Zhang Qi was. This was the best time to rush out. Jingyu tightly grabbed Qin Bai's clothes and shouted in the direction of Xiaochen. Xiaochen, Xiaochen. It's too late. Li Weiming looked in the direction of Xiaochen and furrowed his brows. Take her away. Go. Xiaochen was currently being held back by everyone. Nalinue's shadow, as well as the two brothers, Xiaochen and Yun Tian, were all doing their best to stop Xiaochen. Don't. Xiaochen, hurry up and come here. Jingyu raised her hand to push Qin Bai away. She broke free from Qin Bai's embrace and fell to the ground. She couldn't use any strength in her legs and shouted Xiaochen's name in panic. Go! Xiaochen fiercely waved the long sword in his hand, causing blood to splatter everywhere. Take boss away! Li Weiming shouted fiercely. He didn't hesitate to carry Jingyu on his back and rush towards the gap in front of them. Xiaochen! Jingyu's eyes were filled with fear as she watched Xiaochen's back being slashed again. Xiaochen's figure staggered and his pitch-black eyes stared in the direction of Jingyu. His thin lips were slightly pursed and he didn't say anything. He just stared straight at Jingyu. Chapter 1038. Jingyu looked into Xiaochen's eyes. Her gaze was so cold that it made people tremble in fear. That silent consolation made Jingyu's heart ache. Even at this moment, Xiaochen was still thinking about her safety. Xiaochen! Jingyu used all her strength to struggle towards Xiaochen. She hit Li Weiming fiercely, trying to break free from Li Weiming's grip. Jingyu hit Li Weiming so hard that he groaned. However, his hand that was holding onto Jingyu did not loosen at all. No! They were getting further and further away from Xiaochen. Just as Li Weiming was about to bring Jingyu out of the valley, Jingyu suddenly saw Mu Qinghua slowly drawing her bow. The arrow was aimed straight at Xiaochen. Jingyu saw this scene and almost wanted to rush over and push Xiaochen away. However, Jingyu could do nothing but watch. Jingyu screamed and the cold arrow was shot toward Xiaochen. Jingyu watched in horror as the arrow pierced into Xiaochen's chest. That position, Xiaochen. At this moment, Jingyu's heart seemed to have stopped. In that moment of suffocation, it was as if time had stopped. In Jingyu's eyes, there was only that cold arrow that pierced into Xiaochen's body. Xiaochen lowered his head slightly and looked at the arrow. His body froze and then he looked up at Jingyu. That gaze made Jingyu's heart ache. No! Jingyu screamed. When Qin Bai and Li Weiming saw this scene and heard Jingyu's heart-wrenching scream, their hearts trembled. Qin Bai and Li Weiming looked at each other and then turned to leave at the same time. Li Weiming raised his hand and hit the back of Jingyu's neck. Jingyu's vision blurred and the last thing she saw was Xiaochen's pitiful gaze. Those cold eyes were looking at Jingyu with pity. I'm sorry. I can't continue to take care of you. Jingyu opened her eyes as if she wanted to call out to Xiaochen, but she couldn't do anything. She watched as Xiaochen's body slowly fell backward and her eyes slowly closed. The sound of swords clashing filled her ears. Jingyu fell into a deep coma and lost all consciousness. In the darkness, Jing Yu fell into an incomparably terrifying nightmare. In this dream, Jing Yu saw Xiao Chen die with her own eyes. In the dream, Xiao Chen called out Jing Yu's name again and again. That was an incomparably affectionate call. Jing Yu, don't cry. The gentle voice sounded in Jing Yu's ears as if it came from a faraway place. Jing Yu, who was lying on the bed, had a teardrop at the corner of her eye. Her eyelashes trembled slightly as she slowly opened her tightly shut eyes. The first thing she saw was the familiar curtains. Jing Yu's pitch-black eyes were silently staring at the bed frame. This was the scene that Lu Miaoqiu saw the moment she walked in. When she saw that Jing Yu had woken up, her eyes flashed with joy. However, when she saw the tear stains at the corner of Jing Yu's eyes and her dazed gaze, Lu Miaoqiu's heart suddenly ached. Jing Yu? Lu Miaoqiu carefully walked to Jing Yu's side and called out to her. Chapter 1039. Jing Yu continued to stare at the bed frame quietly without making a sound. Lu Miaoqiu looked at Jing Yu's expression and paused slightly nervously. She reached out to hold Jing Yu's hand and called out to Jing Yu, "Yeah. Where's Xiao Chen?" Jing Yu stared unblinkingly at the bed frame and asked. When Jing Yu finished her question, Lu Miaoqiu's breathing suddenly stopped. "Where's my child?" Jing Yu finally moved. She raised her hand to touch her stomach and asked again. Lu Miaoqiu's expression became even uglier. She didn't loosen her grip on Jing Yu's hand. She looked up at Jing Yu, afraid that Jing Yu would do something extreme. Jing Yu stared for a long time but didn't hear Lu Miaoqiu's reply. She slowly closed her eyes and said, "Let me be alone for a while." "Yeah." Lu Miaoqiu heard Jing Yu's words and her heart tightened. She raised her hand to hold Jing Yu's hand and looked at Jing Yu nervously. "Get out." Jing Yu tilted her head and pulled Lu Miaoqiu's hand away, turning her head to the side. Lu Miaoqiu saw Jing Yu's action and couldn't bear to see Jing Yu like this. However, she still slowly stood up and looked at Jing Yu lying quietly on the bed. She lowered her eyes slightly and turned to leave the room, closing the door behind her. The moment Lu Miaoqiu left, Jing Yu's closed eyes suddenly seeped out drop after drop of tears. The woman curled up on the bed was crying silently. There were no sounds, no shouts, and no words. There were only tears that flowed freely drop by drop. "Madam Xing Er saw Lu Miaoqiu come out from the door. He paused slightly and stared at Lu Miaoqiu as he asked. Lu Miaoqiu slowly shook her head and didn't say anything. Xing Er's eyes revealed a trace of sadness and he slowly lowered his head. There was a moment of silence. After what seemed like a long time, Lu Miaoqiu looked up at Xing Er and asked, "The ninth emperor's he? Today, you and Mingyuan went to bring back Master's armor?" A dark look appeared in Second Xing's eyes, and he spoke as if he was filled with resentment. "Master's corpse is incomplete." "What did you say?" After Xing Er said this, an extremely cold voice sounded from beside Xing Er. Xing Er's heart trembled and he turned to see Jing Yu standing in front of Xing Er and Lu Miaoqiu with a pale face. "Madam." Xing Er probably didn't expect Jing Yu to get up so quickly. There was a trace of surprise in his eyes. "What did you just say? Xiao Chen, what happened to him?" Jing Yu ignored Xing Er's call and stared at Jing Yu with her pitch-black eyes. "Master, he..." Xing Er's breathing paused. For a moment, he didn't know how to express himself to Jing Yu. Jing Yu walked closer to Xing Er step by step. As if she thought of something, she stared at Xing Er and said, "What happened to Xiao Chen?" "Master's corpse is incomplete." Xing Er seemed to be using all his strength to say each word. "What do you mean by that?" Jing Yu's voice trembled for a moment and a layer of mist appeared in her eyes again. Xing Er and Lu Miaoqiu both fell silent when they heard Jing Yu's question. Chapter 1040. They really didn't have the heart to explain such cruel words again. "Take me there." Jing Yu gritted her teeth as she looked at Xing Er. "Madam." Xing Er couldn't bear to look at Jing Yu and wanted to reject her. "I don't believe that Xiao Chen is dead without seeing his corpse with my own eyes," Jing Yu said resolutely as she looked at Xing Er. When Xing Er heard Jing Yu's words, He immediately felt as though a fishbone was stuck in his throat and he found it difficult to breathe. In the end, Xing Er nodded and led Jing Yu to an empty courtyard. Jing Yu's arrival caused a commotion in the originally dull courtyard. Perhaps no one had expected Jing Yu to come. Qing Gu stood in front of the door and paused when he saw Jing Yu walking over. "Ninth sister-in-law?" Qing Gu called out. Jing Yu's heart tightened when she saw his reddened eyes. "Ninth brother is inside." After Qing Gu said this sentence in a heavy tone, he slowly moved his body to the side and made way for the door behind him. Jing Yu raised her head slightly and looked at the door. At this moment, she suddenly wanted to turn around and escape. She didn't want to push open the door and face this heart-wrenching reality. However, Jing Yu walked towards the door step by step. Everyone watched as Jing Yu stood in front of the door and stared at it. Jing Yu wanted to use all her strength to push it open. Jing Yu stood in front of the door for a long time. The air in the courtyard seemed to have frozen because of her waiting. Finally, Jing Yu moved her hand. Qing Gu, who was standing beside Jing Yu, could clearly see that Jing Yu's hand was trembling. When Qing Gu saw her trembling fingertips, he suddenly felt tears welling up in his eyes. He turned his head abruptly and forced back the tears in his eyes. Everyone lowered their heads. They couldn't bear to watch this scene. Jing Yu's body trembled slightly. Her footsteps seemed to be floating as she stepped into the house. At a glance, she could see a human figure lying on a large bed with a black veil floating around it. At the side of the bed, there was a huge foundation word. It stung Jing Yu's eyes. Jing Yu walked towards the bed step by step and saw the person lying on the bed. However, when she looked over, her eyes suddenly widened. The person lying on the bed had all 4 limbs, but no head. Who is it? Who did it? Seeing this scene, Jing Yu almost collapsed in an instant. She rushed over and looked at Xiao Chen's body, which was wearing black armor, in shock and anger. Jing Yu knew every scar on the armor. Jing Yu also saw the arrow that penetrated the armor. However, Jing Yu couldn't see Xiao Chen's face. She couldn't see the head of the person she loved. Ninth sister-in-law. Qing Gu followed Jing Yu in. When he heard Jing Yu's words, his heart trembled. He said, "Ninth brother was brought back like this? Ninth brother's head was taken away. I don't know where it went." Jing Yu tore Xiao Chen's body apart crazily. She ripped open the armor on Xiao Chen's body. "I don't believe it was you. I don't believe it. I remember the scars on your body. On your back, on your back." Jing Yu searched Xiao Chen's back crazily. However, no matter how hard she searched, she found those familiar scars. This scene almost drove Jing Yu crazy. This corpse really was Xiao Chen's? Why? Chapter 1041. Poison Sect. Nailing you. Holy Family. Jing Yu clung tightly to Xiao Chen's armor. Her pitch-black eyes suddenly turned into a pair of fiery gold. There was even a hint of blood-red light in this gold. Jing Yu won't kill all of you. I swear I'm not human." It was like a venomous curse, like a monstrous hatred. At this moment, the incomparably sharp words exploded in everyone's ears, making them feel a heartfelt fear. The surroundings fell into silence. Jing Yu lowered her head and carefully tidied Xiao Chen's clothes. Even the smallest crease on the clothes were smoothed out by Jing Yu. She raised a hand to touch Xiao Chen's armor and her heart trembled. She raised her hand slightly and looked at the empty neck. Jing Yu's heart felt like it was being tightly gripped by someone. It was incomparably uncomfortable. Her Xiao Chen, the infinitely glorious Xiao Chen, the Xiao Chen feared by the world. Why did he become like this? Jing Yu sat beside Xiao Chen's spirit bed and quietly accompanied Xiao Chen. Her eyes were calm without any fluctuations. Qing and Xing Er looked at Jing Yu's dazed appearance. They looked at each other and didn't say anything. Yeah. After a while, Lu Miaoqiu finally walked over to Jing Yu's side. She raised a hand to support Jing Yu's shoulder and said, "Your body hasn't recovered yet. Go back and rest." Jing Yu didn't move. She slightly paused and called out, "Qing Gu." Ninth sister-in-law. Qing Gu heard Jing Yu's call and quickly walked over. He looked at Jing Yu and responded, "How did my child die?" Jingyu said as her hand unconsciously touched her abdomen. Her hand tightly gripped her stomach as she spoke indifferently. Chingu heard her indifferent tone and his breathing became sluggish. For a moment, he didn't know what Jingyu meant by this question and didn't know how to answer. Speak. Jingyu narrowed her eyes slightly and said coldly, Speak. She suffered a heavy blow, which led to a miscarriage. Chingu lowered his head and told the truth. When Jingyu heard Qingji's words, a scene suddenly appeared before her eyes. Nailin Yu's figure was extremely dazzling as she rushed over. The words she had said still seemed to echo in Jingyu's ears. The palm that had hit her, the cold words that she had said, caused Jingyu's hand to tighten inch by inch on her lower abdomen. She killed her father, her husband, and her son. How could she not take revenge for all these debts and grudges? I understand. Jingyu slowly released her hand from her abdomen. Her expression was so calm that Chingu felt a lingering fear. He didn't know what was wrong with Jingyu. Could it be that something terrible had happened? Dr. Chingu, Miss Shengguan has woken up. Just as Chingu was frightened and Jingyu was reacting, a voice suddenly came from outside. Jingyu and Qingji's eyes lit up. Jingyu suddenly stood up and walked towards the door. She's awake. How is it? Chingu also had a look of excitement as he quickly walked in front of the guard who had sent the message and asked. Her consciousness is still a little unclear, but there are signs of her fever subsiding. When the guard heard Qingji's question, he quickly said, General Shengguan and a few other generals have rushed over. Let's go and take a look. Chingu quickly said. Chapter 1042. Jingyu followed behind Chingu, but when she stepped out of the room and looked around, she didn't see that familiar figure. She frowned slightly and asked, Chingu, where's Qinbai? Why didn't I see him come out? After Jingyu asked this question, Chingu suddenly stopped in his tracks with a look of surprise on his face. He looked at Jingyu strangely. Jingyu received Qingji's gaze and her eyebrows twitched. She suddenly thought of that scene. Jingyu suddenly grabbed Qingji's arm and asked in a trembling voice, Where's Qinbai? He's unconscious. Chingu looked at Jingyu and pursed his lips slightly. He said, he was stabbed in the heart and lungs. He was lucky to be able to make it back to Jinling. I'm using medicine to keep him alive, but what? Jingyu's hands trembled for a moment, and she felt as if she had fallen into an ice cellar. But whether or not he can wake up, whether or not he can survive this, I don't know. Chingu let out a deep sigh and replied. What? Jingyu's eyes flashed with shock. Her eyes trembled slightly and were filled with disbelief. Was Qinbai going to leave her again? Was Qinbai number 9? Jingyu hadn't repaid her kindness, and this time, Qinbai had blocked a sword for her. This silly man. Jingyu's heart trembled slightly. Her body stiffened and she stood there, unable to say a word. Where's Qinbai? Jingyu took a deep breath and looked up at Chingu. He's next to your room. Chingu pursed his lips slightly and said, the last thing Qinbai said when he brought you back was, he said, even if I die, I want to be closer to you. Be closer to you. Jingyu's mind went blank. She suddenly remembered number 9's words in her previous life. I'm willing to die in your arms. That way, I can be closer to you. I'll be the first to find you in my next life. Their words were so similar. But number 9, Jingyu bit her lips slightly. Let's go. Jingyu lowered her head and walked towards Shengguan Linglan's room. Shengguan Linglan had already woken up. To be precise, he was still in a half-awake state and was mumbling something in a daze. Shengguan Hongwen sat beside Shengguan Linglan's bed. Jingyu didn't know if it was her illusion, but the moment she looked at Shengguan Hongwen, she suddenly felt that Shengguan Hongwen seemed to have aged a lot at this moment. The white hair by his ears made Jingyu's heart tremble slightly. If her father was still alive, he would probably look like this too. 9th Imperial Concubine. Just as Jingyu was in a daze, Shengguan Hongwen's voice pulled Jingyu out of her thoughts. Jingyu nodded slightly at Shengguan Hongwen. How is Linglan? Jingyu walked to Shengguan Linglan's bedside and saw the tightly bandaged wounds on Shengguan Linglan's body. Jingyu's eyes flickered as she looked at the bandages on Shengguan Linglan's body. It's my fault. If you hadn't followed me, you wouldn't have had to suffer like this. Jing Yu looked at Shangguan Linglan's bandaged neck and her heart trembled. No matter what, everyone valued a woman's appearance. Now, Shangguan Linglan had become like this. Her body was full of scars. Qinggu. Jing Yu looked up at Qinggu and said, "Do you have any way to heal Linglan's wounds without leaving any scars?" Chapter 1043. This. Qinggu pursed his lips and said, "Ninth sister, there are many scars on Miss Shangguan's body. I can't remove them all. I can only make them fade." After Qinggu said this, Jing Yu's eyes trembled and she lowered her head. Looking at Shangguan Linglan, who was still in a coma, he suddenly didn't know what kind of reaction she would have when she woke up and learned of this news. Lu Miaoqiu also stood beside Jing Yu and looked at Shangguan Linglan, who was still in a coma. She raised her hand to cover her mouth and didn't say anything. She took a deep breath and became silent. She looked at Shangguan Linglan, who was lying on the bed with a pair of worried eyes, and didn't say anything. Jing Yu asked Shangguan Linglan a few questions and watched as someone changed the bandages on Shangguan Linglan's wounds. Then she left the room. Outside the house, Shangguan Hongwen and Shangguan Linglan's brothers were all sitting down. None of them were uninjured. Their hands that were wrapped in plaster and holding onto the wooden frame were hanging around their necks. They were all sitting on the chairs outside the house. All of them were silent. "What is it like in the army now?" Jing Yu looked around at everyone and finally asked with pursed lips. "Heavy casualties." Shangguan Hongwen sighed deeply and said, "The casualties this time are too great. Almost all of our soldiers are crippled. Less than 3/10 of our soldiers are still usable. This situation," Shangguan Hongwen lowered his head and said, "if the 4 countries attack Jinling again, we won't be able to stop them." "I understand." Jing Yu didn't expect the casualties to be so high. Hearing Shangguan Hongwen's words, Jing Yu felt how tragic this defeat was. "What's the 9th Imperial Concubine's plan?" Shangguan Hongwen sighed deeply and looked at Jing Yu. When Jing Yu heard Shangguan Hongwen's question, she paused for a second and said, "When the injured soldiers can walk, we will leave Jinling." "Leave Jinling?" When Shangguan Hongwen heard Jing Yu's words, he blinked in confusion and asked, "If we leave Jinling, where will we go?" Shangguan Hongwen didn't understand. Everyone else didn't understand either. "We will go to the Roman forest." Jing Yu looked into the distance and said, "The forest?" Everyone exclaimed and looked at each other. Then, they turned their gazes to Jing Yu. There was a hint of astonishment in their eyes. Jing Yu took a deep breath and said, "Right now, the forest is our biggest protection." Jing Yu didn't explain too much and turned to leave. Shangguan Hongwen and the others didn't understand Jing Yu's actions, but since Jing Yu said that, she must have her reasons. Shangguan Hongwen was still worried. After thinking for a while, he went to Jing Yu to ask her. Jing Yu only said one sentence to Shangguan Hongwen. "General Shangguan, what do you think of my Mahist cavalry?" Jing Yu's words made Shangguan Hongwen's eyes widen. He looked at Jing Yu in disbelief. His eyes were filled with fear. Jing Yu only smiled. Shangguan Hongwen left without saying a word. Shangguan Hongwen originally thought that they would lose this battle, but for some reason, after hearing Jing Yu's words, his heart was filled with excitement. Chapter 1044. He seemed to have a premonition that what was about to happen would be very terrifying. After Shangguan Hongwen left, Jing Yu rested for a while before coming out of her room. She turned around and went to the room on the other side of the courtyard. That was Qin Bai's room. Jing Yu's arrival startled the people who had stayed behind to serve her. They bowed slightly to Jing Yu and stepped aside, allowing her to enter the room. The room was especially cold and cheerless. It was so quiet that Jing Yu felt a sense of oppression. A figure was lying on the bed. His eyes were tightly shut and his breathing was so weak that it seemed like he was not breathing at all. If not for the rising and falling of his chest, Jing Yu would have thought that the person lying on the bed was already dead. "Qin Bai." Jing Yu carefully sat beside Qin Bai. She looked at the unconscious Qin Bai. Looking at that familiar face, her heart trembled slightly. Scenes from her past life flashed through her mind. Jing Yu's fingertips trembled slightly. In my past life, I had nothing, only you. In this life, I have everything. I thought I was really happy, but, Jing Yu bit her lips tightly. She leaned her head against the side of the bed and said, "Why do I have nothing now? Nothing." Number 9. Tamed. Hurry up and wake up. Jing Yu's eyes were a little misty. She blinked and looked at Qin Bai. You said something about living and dying together. Jing Yu said as she slowly raised her hand. How childish. Jing Yu looked at the mark on her middle finger. The small words on it made Jing Yu's eyes go into a trance. It was as if she had returned to that time when Qin Bai shamelessly put the ring on her finger. He even said something about living and dying together. Jing Yu lowered her head and looked at Qin Bai's tightly shut eyes. She said softly, "Wake up? What if you die and I die with you? I haven't taken my revenge yet. I can't die." Jing Yu slowly put her hand down and murmured, "You said it before. No matter what I do, you will accompany me. You said it in your previous life, and you said it in this life. You didn't fulfill your promise in your past life. In this life, are you going to lie to me again?" Jing Yu's eyes trembled slightly. She turned to look at Qin Bai and slowly fell silent. Liar. After a long period of silence, Jing Yu looked up at the ceiling and said, "They're all liars. He clearly said that I'm his daughter and that he would pave the way for me in the future. He clearly said that after the war ended, he would accompany me to live in seclusion in the mountains. But they left me one after another. Liar. You are all liars." Jing Yu slowly closed her eyes and placed her legs on the bed. She hugged her knees and curled up between them. She buried her head in her arms and didn't make a sound. The only thing that could be seen was her trembling shoulders. Jing Yu was as helpless as a child. After an unknown amount of time, perhaps Jing Yu was really tired. She unknowingly fell asleep beside Qin Bai's bed. Her curled-up body lay on the corner of Qin Bai's bed, just a little bit closer. Her petite body was like an insecure hedgehog. She curled up and didn't move at all. Chapter 1045. This was the scene that Qin Bai saw when he opened his eyes. The moonlight outside the window shone on Jing Yu's body. Jing Yu's brows were tightly furrowed, and he could even see traces of tears in her eyes. She looked so pitiful. Qin Bai just leaned on the bed and looked at Jing Yu with a pair of calm eyes. He didn't wake her up, nor did he do anything else. He just looked at Jing Yu. His pitch-black eyes stared quietly at Jing Yu's face as if he was tracing her facial features. His deep eyes didn't fluctuate at all. They were deep and quiet. Qin Bai looked at Jing Yu, and a scene unconsciously appeared in his mind. When they first met, Jing Yu's words and actions were different from other girls. Every sentence she said made Qin Bai feel incomparably fresh. Under the encirclement of Yun Tian, Jing Yu's every gaze, action, and word made Qin Bai unconsciously pay attention to Jing Yu. He quietly stood beside her and watched her do everything. Everything that had happened in the stone room, including the slight fluctuation in his heart, made Qin Bai panic for a moment. He didn't understand why he felt that way. However, when he felt Jing Yu drink his blood and slowly recover, Qin Bai suddenly felt a strange feeling. It was a feeling called willingness. Qin Bai's pitch-black eyes were sometimes deep and sometimes cold. The gaze that stared at Jing Yu was constantly changing, as if he was making a decision. It also seemed like he was struggling with something important. His eyes were fixed on Jing Yu, and he didn't relax. Suddenly, Qin Bai reached out and touched Jing Yu's face. When his warm hand touched Jing Yu's cold face, Qin Bai was startled and retracted his hand. When he realized that Jing Yu hadn't woken up, he raised his hand and gently touched Jing Yu's face. Jing Yu's eyes were tightly shut, and it was obvious that she had fallen into a deep sleep. As Qin Bai gently caressed Jing Yu's face, he suddenly thought of the last time at the back of the mountain, when Jing Yu had anxiously searched for him. He had been standing under the shade of a tree. He had originally wanted to walk out, but he had stopped. He had stood there and watched Jing Yu turn in circles and call out his name. For some reason, Qin Bai had suddenly thought that his name had never sounded so pleasant to the ears. He had even wanted to let her continue searching like this. When Jing Yu had said that she was worried about him, Qin Bai had been greatly shaken. No one had ever treated him like this. Although he knew that Jingyu was probably like this to everyone, Qin Bai couldn't help but tremble. A Jingyu like this, Qin Bai narrowed his eyes and looked at Jingyu. He stared at Jingyu's face and a faint smile suddenly appeared in his eyes. He seemed to murmur, "My fiancé." Jingyu seemed to have slept for a long time. When Jingyu woke up, she felt that all the bones in her body were aching. She raised her head in a daze and looked at the unfamiliar scenery around her. When she raised her eyes to look at the figure still lying on the bed, she instantly regained consciousness. She suddenly remembered what had happened yesterday. Qin Bai was still unconscious. His eyes were tightly shut and there was no movement. His weak breathing made Jingyu feel slightly relieved. He was indeed hanging on by a thread and there was no movement at all. Jingyu got up and carefully tidied up the blanket. She turned around and left the room. After instructing the guards to take good care of Qin Bai, Jingyu returned to her room. After washing up, she headed towards Shengguan Linglan's courtyard. Chapter 1046. Madam. To Jingyu's surprise, when she arrived, she saw Xing Er taking care of Shengguan Linglan instead of Jingyu. "Why are you here?" Jingyu looked up at Xing Er in surprise. General Shengguan's old illness relapsed, so Sir Qinggu sent her to recuperate. Xing Er put down the bowl of porridge in his hand and said, "Miss Shengguan has no one to take care of her, so I came over." Jingyu nodded slightly after hearing Xing Er's reply. She then asked, "Can Linglan eat now?" "She can eat some simple food." Xing Er said, "Sir Qinggu said that Miss Shengguan is recovering well and should be able to wake up tomorrow. As long as she doesn't have a fever tonight, she should be fine." "Really?" Jingyu's eyes flashed with joy when she heard Xing Er's words. She said, "It's great that she can wake up." Xing Er nodded slightly. His face was expressionless, but Jingyu saw the gentle look in Xing Er's eyes. She turned to look at Shengguan Linglan. When she saw Xing Er's expression, she felt a little more at ease. "Let her rest well. We're going to the barracks." Jingyu looked up at Xing Er and said. Xing Er lowered his head and made a sound of acknowledgement. Jingyu nodded slightly and turned to leave the house. There were countless injured soldiers in the military camp. Qinggu had been extremely busy these days, rushing about everywhere. When Jingyu arrived at the military camp, all she heard was the sound of groaning. "Ninth sister-in-law," Qinggu called out when he saw Jingyu arrive. He wiped the sweat off his forehead. "How are the soldiers?" Jingyu pursed her lips and looked at the room full of injured soldiers. Her heart trembled slightly as she asked. "These are all seriously injured soldiers." Qinggu stood beside Jingyu and said, "The soldiers who have recovered have been transferred to the next room to recuperate. The most troublesome thing now is that we have used up all the medicine we can use. However, more than half of the soldiers have not been treated." Jingyu frowned when she heard Qingji's words. "Madam, there's another thing. It's the problem of food." At this moment, Second Xing also opened his mouth and said, "In the Battle of Tongmen Slope, the soldiers suffered heavy casualties, and the rations were all burned. Right now, there isn't much rations left in Jinling. They ran away a long time ago." Qinggu shook his head helplessly and said, "The people in the surrounding towns have all been cleared out by the people from the 4 countries. There's nothing left. I don't think these people plan to attack us. Instead, they want to wait for us to surrender." "Yes." Xing Er nodded slightly and said, "I wanted to send people out to transport food, but they were all beaten back. All the roads are closed and there's no way out." "These people..." Jingyu's eyes slowly darkened. Jingyu could clearly sense these people's thoughts. They wanted Jingyu to surrender. Otherwise, they would have already brought people to kill them. But she didn't expect these people to be so patient. "Qinggu." Jingyu rolled her eyes and suddenly looked at Qinggu and said, "Xing Er, you two come with me." Jingyu led Qinggu and Xing Er to the side of the conference room. She walked to the main seat and sat down. In front of Qinggu and Xing Er, she unfolded the paper on the table and started drawing. Chapter 1047. This brush is too difficult to use. Xing Er and Qing Gu watched Jing Yu seriously draw for a long time. They had been waiting with heavy hearts, but they didn't expect to hear such a sentence after waiting for so long. Ninth sister-in-law, what are you drawing? Qing Ji's mouth twitched as he looked at Jing Yu and asked. I'm drawing herbs. Jing Yu raised the xian paper in her hand. Qing Gu raised his head and looked at it. The moment he saw it, he spat it out. On the white paper was a drawing of an herb that didn't look like one. Was this really an herb? Was it really not a bean sprout? Qing Gu looked at the drawing on Jing Yu's paper with a conflicted expression and frowned. Forget it. Jing Yu silently put the paper away and decisively gave up on drawing. Xing Er, how long can the rations in Jinling town last? Jing Yu looked up at Xing Er and asked. When Xing Er heard Jing Yu's question, he frowned and said, about 1 more month. Jing Yu nodded slightly and turned to look at Qing Gu. How many more people can our medicine save? How many more need treatment? Right now, the remaining medicine can at most heal 100 people. However, there are more than 1,000 people who need medicine. Among them, there are countless who have minor injuries. Qing Gu pursed his lips slightly and gave an extremely heavy number. I understand. Jing Yu frowned slightly and turned to look at Xing Er. Regarding the rations, no matter how much is left, we must let the soldiers eat until they are full. Also, inform everyone to start preparing for the migration into the Roman forest. Qing Gu, pick a few strong soldiers with good eyesight and a few military doctors to follow me into the forest. Jing Yu turned to look at Qing Gu. Xing Er replied softly. Enter the Roman forest? Qing Gu was slightly taken aback when he heard Jing Yu's words. He then looked at Jing Yu in confusion and said, could it be that ninth sister-in-law wants to bring people into the Roman forest to pick herbs to replace this healing medicine? Qing Ji's eyes lit up as he asked Jing Yu. When he saw Jing Yu nod, his eyes lit up with joy. However, his expression quickly fell and he looked at Jing Yu. The herbs in this forest are not bad, but the forest is so big, to find them, I'm afraid we'll need a lot of manpower. Qing Gu frowned and looked at Jing Yu worriedly. Qing Gu, have you forgotten? When Jing Yu heard Qing Ji's words, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly as she said, in this Roman forest, who else is more familiar with it than me? With me leading the way, you only need to bring enough people to dig. Yes. Qing Ji's eyes lit up with joy when he heard Jing Yu's words. He said, I forgot about this. I'll go arrange it now. Qing Gu and Xing Er left in a hurry. Jing Yu narrowed her eyes. As long as they entered the forest, medicine and food were not important. What would happen after they entered the forest? Jing Yu narrowed her eyes and turned to leave the room. She wandered around the camp and looked at the injured soldiers. When she saw that Jing Yu had personally come to help, a look of joy appeared in their eyes. Chapter 1048. They were overwhelmed by the favor. Seeing Jing Yu like this, all the soldiers were touched. By the time Jing Yu came out of the room, the sky was already dark. Jing Yu rubbed her sore arms and walked forward with her head lowered. Jing Yu. Just as Jing Yu was walking, a voice called out to her from behind. Jing Yu stopped and turned to see Yuan Mingyuan walking towards Jing Yu. How are your injuries? Jing Yu frowned as she looked at Yuan Mingyuan. It's nothing serious. Yuan Mingyuan stood in front of Jing Yu and pursed his lips as he looked at Jing Yu and asked, Are you okay? When Jing Yu heard Yuan Mingyuan's question, she was stunned for a moment. She lowered her eyes and a faint smile appeared in her eyes as she said, Thank you, I'm fine. Jing Yu's voice was flat without any hesitation as she turned around and walked away. Yuan Mingyuan looked at Jing Yu's actions and was stunned for a moment. He strode beside Jing Yu as if he wanted to say something. But in the end he didn't say anything. He just followed Jing Yu and silently walked all the way to a high ground. Jing Yu sat by the riverbank and looked up at the river in a daze. Her eyes were as calm as the river, without any ripples. Yuan Mingyuan sat down beside Jing Yu. He paused for a moment and raised his hand to take off the blindfold on his face. Jing Yu looked at Yuan Mingyuan and was slightly surprised when she saw Yuan Mingyuan's actions. Why are you still unwilling to take off your blindfold? Jingyu asked curiously. Now that we're here, no one will treat you as a monster. After all I'm here. Hee hee. Yuan Mingyuan chuckled and said, I'm used to it. I'm not used to taking it off and letting others see it the other way around. Jingyu heard Yuan Mingyuan's answer and shook her head helplessly. She said, Then why are you willing to take it off in front of me? Yuan Mingyuan heard Jingyu's words and paused for a moment. He remained silent for a long time. Just when Jingyu thought that Yuan Mingyuan wouldn't answer, Yuan Mingyuan suddenly said, Because you're the only one who didn't look at me strangely. Jingyu was slightly stunned when she heard Yuan Mingyuan's answer. She turned to look at Yuan Mingyuan. That one black eye and the other red eye were really frightening. Jingyu smiled weakly and turned her head away. She didn't want to say anything else. She quietly looked at the river and felt the wind blow across her skin. She closed her eyes slightly, but the moment she closed them, she suddenly opened them. Why was it that when she closed her eyes, all she thought of was those incomparably cruel scenes? Let's go back. Jingyu stood up and turned to walk back to her residence. Just as Jingyu was about to leave, Yuan Mingyuan suddenly reached out and grabbed Jingyu's wrist. Jingyu paused and looked at Yuan Mingyuan in confusion. It's nothing. Yuan Mingyuan's lips moved as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything. He slowly let go of his hand and watched as Jingyu's petite figure gradually disappeared into the distance. Jingyu walked towards the place where Xiao Chen's corpse was placed. When the guards saw Jingyu arrive, they all stepped aside. After Jingyu walked in and closed the door, there was no sound from inside. Chapter 1049. The guards didn't think much of it at first, but after a long while, they still didn't hear Jingyu coming out. They instantly became anxious and carefully leaned against the door, wanting to hear what was going on inside. What are you doing? This was the scene that Lu Miaoqiu saw when she arrived. She furrowed her brows in confusion as she looked at the guards and asked, Crown Princess. When the two guards saw Lu Miaoqiu, they hurriedly bowed and said, The 9th imperial concubine has entered the room. It has been 2 hours and she still hasn't come out. Open the door. When Lu Miaoqiu heard the guard's words, her heart skipped a beat and she hurriedly said. The guard hurriedly opened the door and Lu Miaoqiu anxiously rushed in. However, the moment she entered, she was stunned. In this room, there were candles burning quietly. Jingyu, whom Lu Miaoqiu was only worried about, was lying on the spirit bed, leaning against Xiao Chen's chest. Her hands were tightly intertwined with Xiao Chen's, causing Lu Miaoqiu, who had barged in, to hold her breath. Looking at Jingyu's peaceful sleeping face, it was as if she was having a beautiful dream. The corner of Jingyu's mouth curved into an incomparably comfortable arc. That kind of smile made Lu Miaoqiu fall into a trance for a moment. How long has it been since she saw Jingyu smile like this? It seemed to have been a very, very long time. That woman who had just arrived in the imperial city was so carefree and unrestrained. But now, let's go out. Lu Miaoqiu carefully turned and left, leaving the empty space behind her for Xiao Chen and Jingyu. The sight of the two people lying on the spirit bed together was so dazzling that Lu Miaoqiu's eyes moistened. This day passed very quickly, but it also seemed very slow. When Jingyu woke up the next day, she was in her room. He's awake? Lu Miaoqiu walked in with a basin of water and said, Qinggu and a group of people are already waiting outside, saying that they want to enter the Roman forest with you. Jingyu frowned slightly and said, Miaoqiu, go find a few servant girls. Why are you doing all this manual labor? Jingyu looked at Lu Miaoqiu as she fetched water and said with a slight frown, I'm fine. Lu Miaoqiu shook her head slightly and said, In such a war-torn place, which maid would be willing to follow us? This is not a heavy job. I can do it. Really? Jingyu shook her head helplessly. She took the towel from Lu Miaoqiu and began to wash up. When Jingyu was ready to go out, she saw Qinggu and dozens of soldiers waiting outside. Sorry to keep you waiting. Jingyu, dressed in black, stood in front of Qinggu and nodded slightly. 9th sister-in-law, you're finally out. Qinggu looked at Jingyu excitedly and said, We've been waiting here for a long time. Let's go. Let's go. Jing Yu nodded slightly and led the group into the forest. The area outside Jinling town was barren and there were no traces of people. Jing Yu looked up and looked around. She originally thought that the people from the 4 countries would take the opportunity to take Jinling, but now it seemed that was not the case. The Roman forest did not change at all. It was still filled with towering trees. After stepping into the Roman forest, Jing Yu's depressed mood improved slightly. Looking at the trees, Jing Yu sighed slightly. Let's go this way. Jing Yu was familiar with the roads in the Roman forest. She turned the horse around and ran to the side of the road. When they reached the end of the road, Jing Yu got off the horse and said, "We can only walk for the rest of the road. There's no need for horses." Chapter 1050. Okay, then we'll leave these horses here for now. We'll ride them when we return. Chingu responded and called for everyone to tie up the horses. Then he followed Jing Yu into the forest. After Jing Yu walked for a while, she raised her hand to her lips and blew a clear and loud whistle. The clear whistle sounded in the forest. Chingu and the soldiers all stopped in their tracks and looked in the direction that Jing Yu was looking at. The originally quiet forest suddenly became chaotic. Under everyone's nervous gazes, a gray wolf scuttled out of the dense forest. The gray wolf had a muscular body. Its gray fur was faintly glowing. There was a tuft of white fur between its eyebrows, making it look even more handsome. Yin Jian. Jing Yu looked at Yin Jian with a faint smile in her eyes. She raised her hand and patted Yin Jian's head. Yin Jian snorted twice and circled around Jing Yu, wagging its tail happily. Not long after, Yin Feng also ran out of the dense forest. The 2 gray wolves circled around Jing Yu. Chingu and the soldiers behind Jing Yu looked at them. Chingu was very familiar with these 2 big fellows. However, the soldiers who followed Chingu weren't familiar with them. Today was the first time they saw how Jing Yu interacted with Yin Jian and Yin Feng. Astonishment appeared in their eyes. Let's go. Jing Yu stood up and looked sideways at Chingu and the soldiers. Only then did everyone return to their senses and follow Jing Yu into the dense forest. The 9th Imperial Concubine's 2 big wolves are really scary. One of the soldiers saw the 2 gray wolves beside Jing Yu and swallowed his saliva. What are you afraid of? They're not going to bite you. The other person glanced at the 2 gray wolves that were originally ferocious beasts quietly following beside Jing Yu and said calmly, "Don't worry, I'm not going to let you go," the other person said calmly as he glanced at the originally ferocious beasts. Who would have thought that just as this person finished speaking, the gray wolf that was originally standing motionless suddenly paused. Then, under the astonished gazes of everyone, the gray wolf quickly rushed in front of the person who had just spoken. The action of pouncing over scared the person to the point that he trembled and almost fell to the ground. Fortunately, the gray wolf suddenly paused and stared at the man in front of it. 9th Imperial Concubine. What does it want to do? The soldier looked at the gray wolf in front of him with incomparable terror. He felt his legs and stomach trembling. "Oh, it seems like it's hungry." Jing Yu looked at the mischievous Yin Jian and replied with a faint smile in her eyes. The 2 people who were already scary enough widened their eyes in horror when they heard Jing Yu's reply. "Hungry?" That person swallowed his saliva silently and asked carefully, "It won't eat people, right?" "This little guy will eat anything when it's starving." Jing Yu replied with a smile. Yin Jian roared at this time, and the soldier who was originally standing strong suddenly trembled and sat down on the ground after hearing Jing Yu's words. "Ha!" Jing Yu couldn't help but laugh out loud when she saw the frightened look on the soldier's face. She looked at the people around her and saw that all of their faces were pale. Jing Yu was really amused. Chapter 1051. With your guts, you really can't stand being scared. Jing Yu shook her head in amusement. She raised her hand to call Silver Arrow back and said, "Let's go quickly. If we don't go further in, these 2 little fellows will really eat people when they're hungry." Hurry up. Jing Yu's words shocked everyone. They quickened their pace and stayed far away from Jing Yu, afraid that they would be attacked by the 2 gray wolves. Silver Arrow and Silver Wind, The two big fellows immediately raised their heads arrogantly when they saw how everyone was afraid of them. Looking at the way they walked, they couldn't be more arrogant. A faint smile appeared in Jing Yu's eyes. She tilted her head slightly and continued to walk forward. After walking for a long distance, they finally heard the sound of running water. Jing Yu, who had been leading the way, also ran to the side of the small ditch. She squatted down and dug up a stalk of herb. Then she called Chingu and the rest over. All of you, look around this area. Dig up any herb you see. Remember to be careful when you dig. Don't hurt the roots. Jing Yu called everyone over and instructed them on some things they needed to pay attention to. Then, everyone spread out to dig for herbs. Jing Yu led the group and swept through the surrounding area. Chingu knew the effects of these herbs, but Jing Yu was really good at finding herbs. What made Chingu most dumbfounded was that Jing Yu could actually make the two gray wolves, Silver Arrow and Silver Wind, search for herbs. Come, take a good sniff of this herb. Jing Yu held the herb under the noses of Silver Arrow and Silver Wind for them to smell. Then she said, "Go and find it. Howl when you find it. Understand?" Oh. The two gray wolves, Silver Arrow and Silver Wind, straightened up and then flew away under everyone's astonished gaze. Ninth sister-in-law this. Chingu saw that Jing Yu had commanded the two wolves to leave while she sat comfortably on the rock. He immediately widened his eyes and asked, "Can Silver Arrow and Silver Wind really find herbs?" "Humph." Jing Yu looked at Chingu from the corner of her eyes and said, "Their noses are better than yours." Jing Yu didn't care and rolled her eyes. Cough, cough, cough. Chingu coughed silently and said in a low voice, "I didn't expect that compared to them. What did you say?" Jing Yu's eyes suddenly turned cold. She narrowed her eyes and stared at Chingu. Chingu immediately waved his hands and said, "Nothing, nothing. I'll go and find the herbs." After saying that, Chingu quickly ran to the side. He knew that Jing Yu was very protective of her own people. If you dared to say something bad about Silver Arrow and Silver Wind, Jing Yu would instantly turn against you. With the help of Silver Arrow and Silver Wind, the speed of everyone's digging increased rapidly. Jing Yu also didn't stay idle. She looked around and searched for herbs that could be used. At this speed, they would definitely be able to dig enough herbs in 3 days. At this moment, Jing Yu was standing on a large rock. She looked around and wanted to see which path she should take next. Just as Jing Yu was looking around, she suddenly saw a figure appear not far away. Jing Yu frowned slightly and looked over. However, when she looked carefully, she didn't see the figure. Immediately, Jing Yu frowned slightly. Chapter 1052. Could it be that she was mistaken? After standing for a while, Jing Yu jumped down from the rock. The two gray wolves, Yin Jian and Yin Feng, dashed over and stood beside Jing Yu. Jing Yu reached out her hand to rub the heads of the two gray wolves and said, "Let's continue forward. If we descend the mountain from there, we'll be able to return to our original spot." Chingu and the rest of the soldiers responded. Jing Yu led the two gray wolves forward. When she saw the winding path ahead, she frowned slightly. Jing Yu and the rest had not walked far when they suddenly heard voices coming from the dense forest. Jing Yu and the others immediately stopped in their tracks. The guards behind them all drew their swords and sabers. In such a situation, it was definitely not their own people, so it could only be an enemy. Thinking of this, everyone's expressions suddenly became tense. "Shoo!" Jing Yu gestured for them to keep quiet. She carefully climbed up to a higher spot and squatted on the ground to observe the situation below. "I'm not going back." An exasperated voice sounded. Jing Yu squinted her eyes. Under the cover of the leaves, she could vaguely see two people arguing. "Muyu, you're refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit." Another voice sounded. When Jing Yu heard this name, she was stunned. She squinted her eyes in confusion and finally saw who these two people were. The person in the embroidered robe was none other than Helian Xiu. As for the person beside Helian Xiu, the only one who dressed so strangely was Muyu. However, it was still all right now. She finally stopped wearing that big red flower. Jing Yu's mouth twitched. Why didn't these two stay in the barracks? What were they doing in the Roman forest? I'm not going back. What are you trying to do? Are you going to hit me? Muyu stared coldly at Hellion Theo. The anger in his eyes caused Hellion Theo to frown. Hellion Theo, let me tell you. Don't think that you can mess around just because I treat you as a brother. Even if you're a prince, if I don't submit to you, you're nothing. Muyu's expression was incomparably cold. Jingyu had never seen Muyu like this before. Those clear eyes and the words that came out of his mouth made Jingyu slightly stunned. Hellion Theo opened his mouth and was about to speak, but his expression suddenly turned cold as he shouted, "Who's there?" After Hellion Theo's shout, there was a commotion in the bushes. Under Hellion Theo and Muyu's astonished gaze, 2 gray wolves darted out of the bushes. Both of them widened their eyes and stared blankly at the 2 familiar gray wolves in front of them. This is... Hellion Theo was stunned when he saw the 2 gray wolves in front of him. He frowned slightly and raised his head to look. Sure enough, he saw a petite figure appear from the bushes. Jingyu? Before Hellion Theo could say anything, Muyu saw Jingyu and cried out in surprise. The joy in his eyes made Jingyu frown slightly. It's really you? You really came to the forest? Muyu said and was about to walk towards Jingyu. However, just as Muyu was about to move, Yin Feng suddenly blocked in front of Muyu. Yin Feng bared his teeth and revealed his white fangs, causing Muyu to stop in his tracks. He looked at Jingyu with a face full of fear and grievance. Jingyu ignored Muyu's expression and turned her gaze towards Hellion Theo. Chapter 1053. You guys, what are you doing here? Jingyu asked coldly as she stood on the hill and looked down at Muyu and Hellion Theo. It's none of his business. It's me, I'm here to look for you. Muyu replied agitatedly when he heard Jingyu's question. Jingyu frowned slightly and looked at Muyu in confusion. Why are you looking for me? What? Isn't killing Xiaochen enough? Are you going to kill me? Jingyu's eyes were filled with cold mockery. Although she didn't see the northern pastoral troops during the battle outside the pond, Jingyu didn't doubt that they knew about it. Muyu's expression changed when he heard Jingyu's words. He swallowed his saliva and said, Jingyu, I swear I didn't know anything about this. I thought it was just to capture Xiaochen, but I didn't expect. Haha. Jingyu laughed out loud when she heard Muyu's words. Her eyes were filled with coldness as she said, You didn't know? If you didn't know, why would the northern pastoral troops be mobilized? Forget it. You and I are enemies. Jingyu looked coldly at Muyu and said, But in this forest, it's not certain who's going to kill who. Jingyu's words made Yin Jian and Yin Feng glare fiercely at Hellion Theo and Muyu. Their ferocious gazes made it seem like they were going to pounce on them and tear them apart in the next second. It's none of his business. Hellion Theo looked at Yin Jian and Yin Feng without any change in his expression. He frowned slightly and said, I was the one who instigated Muyu to mobilize the troops. After the 4 countries combined to defeat Xiaochen's troops at Tongmen Pass, we withdrew our troops. Hellion Theo stared quietly at Jingyu and said, As for the subsequent chain of events, the northern pastoral troops weren't involved. No matter what, we have something to do with Xiaochen's death. After Hellion Theo finished speaking, Jingyu fell silent. Killing you now would be letting you off too easily. Jingyu looked coldly at Hellion Theo. Every time she thought of Xiaochen's death, Jingyu's heart would ache. Hellion Theo was right, but on the snake battlefield, wasn't it all, you die, or you die? The winner was the king, and the loser was the bandit. Hellion Theo, just you wait. Jingyu took a deep breath and looked coldly at Hellion Theo. She said, One day, the northern pastoral troops will be mine. If you want it, I'll give it to you now. Unexpectedly, just as Jingyu finished speaking, Hellion Theo looked at Jingyu calmly and said such a sentence. Jingyu's eyes widened when she heard this. She saw the pity in Hellion Theo's eyes. Hellion Theo, are you pitying me? Jingyu laughed loudly and looked at Hellion Theo. She said, I don't care for things that are given out by others. Jingyu. Hellion Theo's seductive face was devastatingly beautiful. His eyes were fixed on Jingyu. Jing Yu tilted her head and looked at Hellion Theo without saying a word. I really regret not using all means to marry you when we were in the northern pastoral. Hellion Theo looked quietly at Jing Yu as he said this. When Jing Yu heard Hellion Theo's words, she froze for a moment. She seemed to recall the first time she met Hellion Theo. At that time, Hellion Theo was still a Tokyo-S hostage. At that time, Hellion Theo was extremely dandy. He always looked at you with a pair of peach blossom eyes and was extremely charming. Jing Yu still remembered the first time she met him. After that, she was attracted by Hellion Theo's face. Chapter 1054. If only things could go back to how they were before. Jing Yu turned her back to Hellion Theo and Mu Yu and said indifferently, "You guys can leave. I don't want to kill you." Hellion Theo looked at Jing Yu's petite back and watched as Jing Yu jumped down the mountain and disappeared into the dense forest. Mu Yu was anxious and wanted to chase after her, but he was blocked by Yin Jian and Yin Feng. Mu Yu stared at the two gray wolves in front of him, his eyes full of anxiety. "There's no need to chase after her," Hellion Theo said indifferently. "Let's go." "We're leaving just like that." Mu Yu heard Hellion Theo's words and his eyes widened. He stared at Hellion Theo and said, "I haven't said anything to Jing Yu yet." "Mu Yu, if you don't leave now, you won't be able to," Hellion Theo said as he stopped and stared at Mu Yu with his dark eyes. "What do you mean?" Mu Yu was slightly taken aback. She turned to look at Hellion Xiao, her eyes filled with confusion. "Withdraw the troops and return to our country." Hellion Xiao didn't say anything else and only said these 4 words. Then he turned around and left, leaving behind a dumbfounded Mu Yu. Why did he withdraw his troops just like that? Hellion Theo turned and left. Mu Yu stood there for a long time before he hurriedly followed Hellion Theo's footsteps. He wanted to ask Hellion Theo why he withdrew the troops, but Hellion Theo only walked quietly and didn't say anything. Jing Yu led everyone back to their original spot. After a while, Yin Jian and Yin Feng also followed. In the next 3 days, Jing Yu led everyone to wander around the mountains of the Roman forest. They picked all the medicinal herbs and finally solved the problem of the medicine. A group of soldiers helped dry the medicinal herbs in Jinling town and applied medicine to the wounded soldiers. During this time, Shangguan Linglan finally woke up completely. "Don't make me drink any more medicine. I feel quite comfortable now." Jing Yu heard this sentence the moment she walked into the room. Jing Yu frowned slightly and looked at Shangguan Linglan. Shangguan Linglan was already resting on the bed. Jing Yu's eyes were tinged with a faint smile. She walked in front of Shangguan Linglan and asked, "How do you feel?" "Jing Yu?" Shangguan Linglan saw Jing Yu's arrival and raised his head slightly. He revealed a gentle smile and said, "Pretty good. Look, I can even move." "Don't move." Shangguan Linglan wanted to move for Jing Yu to see, but Xing Er quickly pressed down on Shangguan Linglan's shoulder. Xing Er's eyes were filled with displeasure. He frowned and said, "The wound hasn't healed completely. You can't move." Shangguan Linglan was pressed down by Xing Er. He glared at Xing Er unhappily. Then, his cheeks turned slightly red and he lowered his head. Jing Yu stood at the side and smiled faintly when she saw the two of them like this. However, at this moment, an extremely displeased cough came from the door. Xing Er and Jing Yu turned slightly and saw Shangguan Hongwen walking in. Shangguan Hongwen saw Xing Er's hand on Shangguan Linglan's shoulder and his eyes widened slightly. Xing Er calmly withdrew his hand. He was prepared to receive Shangguan Hongwen's words, but he didn't expect Shangguan Hongwen to only silently glance at Xing Er. Chapter 1055. He then sat down on a chair and looked at Shangguan Linglan. "Lanlan, are you feeling better today?" "Yes, I'm much better." When Shangguan Linglan heard Shangguan Hongwen's question, she looked up at him and smiled. "Father, don't worry too much. I'm fine." Shangguan Hongwen looked at Shangguan Linglan and sighed deeply. "It's good that you're fine." Shangguan Hongwen raised his hand and patted Shangguan Linglan's head lovingly. He looked sideways at the soup that was being served and glared at Xing Er. Why are you still standing there like a fool? Can't you see that my daughter is hungry? Hurry up and feed her. Ah. Xing Er was slightly stunned. When he saw Shangguan Hongwen step aside unhappily, he glared at Xing Er and snorted. When he turned to look at Shangguan Linglong, his expression instantly changed. He smiled and said, "Daughter, have a good rest. Tell me what you want to eat." Oh. Shangguan Linglong's cheeks turned slightly red as she lowered her head. "Take good care of my daughter. If she's bullied, I'll skin you alive." Shangguan Hongwen threw down these words in a very bad mood. Under the extremely strange gazes of the crowd, he turned and left. Jingyu stood at the side and looked at Shangguan Hongwen's arrogant father. She found it funny. Xing Er, who was standing by the bed, still hadn't reacted. Why did Shangguan Hongwen treat him like that? What are you waiting for? Jingyu looked at Xing Er's dazed expression and glared at him. Take good care of Linglong. We're leaving. Madam. Xing Er was stunned and looked at Jingyu. If he still couldn't react, then Xing Er's IQ would be extremely worrying. Jingyu pulled Lu Miaoqiu and was about to leave. Shangguan Linglong looked at Jingyu's actions and glared. Hey, you guys. Shangguan Linglong was anxious and wanted to ask Jingyu to stay. Jingyu winked at Shanghai Linglong and then pulled Lu Miaoqiu away with a smile. Everyone left one after another. Now, only Shangguan Linglong and Xing Er were left. Shanghai Linglong suddenly felt uneasy. Every time Shanghai Linglong was alone with Xing Er, he felt strange. Have some porridge. Xing Er watched Jingyu and the others leave. Then he turned around and walked to Shangguan Linglong's bedside and sat down. He took the bowl on the chair and silently looked at Shanghai Linglong's heavily bandaged hand. He frowned slightly and raised his hand to stir the porridge in his hand. He wanted to feed Shanghai Linglong. I'll do it myself. Shangguan Linglong looked at Xing Er's actions and said softly with a slightly red face. I'll feed you. Xing Er avoided Shangguan Linglong's hand and said, General Shangguan said that he wants me to feed you. When Shangguan Linglong heard Xing Er's words, his face suddenly darkened. Didn't this person fear her father the most? Now, he was actually using her father as an excuse. Seriously. Xing Er carefully fed Shanghai Linglong porridge. Originally, Shanghai Linglong only needed a few mouthfuls to drink porridge. However, now that he was being fed by Xing Er mouthful by mouthful, for some reason, Shanghai Linglong suddenly felt more embarrassed the more he ate. Finally, the bowl of porridge was finished. The atmosphere between the two of them became very subtle. Shangguan Linglong quietly raised his head to look at Xing Er. Xing Er's expression didn't change, but he could clearly see that Xing Er's originally stiff expression was now incomparably gentle. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.